Going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here. It's Dean78904. That is the daily fantasy handle. I know it's a ridiculous name. It is 10:30 on the East Coast. We're at week 12. Very exciting stuff. 9:30 on the West Coast. 10:30 Grant/Colorado/ Pacific time. And it's let's see, do some math here. 9:30 Tennessee time. Of course, that means it's time for the flagship show here at Rotogrinders. It is called Grinderslive. Joining me today, usual suspects, same crew as always. The start of 2.5 hours of NFL DFS content, taking y'all straight up the lock. It's gonna be good times for sure. Grant, tell me some plays that are good today. A lot of the teams that I like in the NFL are not necessarily playing today.
You know who my top owned player is right now?
Do I know who your top owned?
Nearly's top owned quarterback.
Oh yeah, I bet I do.
Who?
Tyrod?
Nope, he's second.
Oh, yeah, because he's probably got a great multiple on Supergraph. I imagine that's one of the reasons why
he's cheap over on. He's got a good multiple on Superdraft. He's cheap over on Yahoo. He's cheap on DK.
He's my favorite quarterback on Yahoo. I believe at $20, and yeah.
But you want to go on? Guess who's my favorite quarterback today?
Well, Andre, you jump in here. We'll go back and forth. We'll play the game. Sure, why not? You know, I there's not a lot of favorite anything for me because this is a slate where it's pretty gross, man. I'm still playing it hard, dug in hard, and I'm still trying to find something that like might pop. And we might get something as far as actives and inactives. You got to stay tuned as far as the Packers later on today. We may get AJ Dillon for one more week, fully unleashed there in that backfield. We're not really sure about Jones. They have a bye week after this week, so they can give them 2 weeks. Or hey, this game means a lot because they're facing the Rams, and maybe they're battling for that number 1 seed. You can kind of look at it both ways. And there's been multiple reports on both sides that it's leaning optimistic. Maybe they're going to hold them off. Who knows? Andre, who's Grant's? By the way, how are you, Andre? Everything good in your world? Hopefully. And yeah, Grant's number 1 favorite quarterback this slate, and I assume it's ugly.
Yeah, I don't know who's. First, I'm doing great. If I take a guess, I would say, guys, Grant. I don't even know. There's so many quarterbacks honestly today that can be played. Matt Ryan?
Nope.
Jimmy G?
No, think gross.
Oh, I mean, gross. Daniel Jones?
Think grosser.
I mean, he's not gross, but Teddy B?
Think grosser.
Chat, throw out some names. So we'll get there eventually, I suppose. Alex here. Alex might have it. Alex in chat is Zach Wilson. It's Zach Wilson.
Yep.
Oh no. Don't, Grant.
Don't do it.
Don't do that.
I'm doing it.
As a friend, Grant. We're friends, right? As a friend, Grant, don't do it.
I'm doing it.
Oh, Jesus. Well, yeah, it's a weird slate. We'll talk about this, break it down position by position, obviously, and we'll go through it, and we'll start with quarterbacks as well. And I understand why you're playing Zach Wilson. I get it. It's a weird slate, and depending on where you're shopping, obviously, the cap's a little bit looser on Yahoo. On Fanduel, it's a little bit looser. On DK, it's really, really tight, and it's a bunch of players I don't really want to pay. I don't want to pay for that aren't necessarily great, and they're all kind of sort of somewhat overpriced, and there's not a ton of value out there. So we're going to probably be spending down, not necessarily most likely, but a lot of builds on DK kind of point in that direction as far as spending down at quarterback. Before we do that, Grant, what is your general assessment as far as a slate? And I think Zach Wilson speaks to your general assessment of the slate. You probably don't like it a lot if you're getting a good bit of Zach Wilson and Tyrod Taylor. 2 quarterbacks in the same game. Jets, Texans, a game that only DFSers can love, right?
Yeah, no, this slate is complete and utter garbage. I hate it.
Yeah.
It's not good, which is why I love it. People don't want to play bad plays. Well, guess what? Everyone's a bad play today. So ownership is going to really heavily congregate on the slightly lesser bad plays. I mean, we have a slate where Miles Sanders is the top owned running back.
Well, yeah, we'll have that conversation. I think it's a good conversation as far as chalk and good chalk and bad chalk. And it feels like whatever sort of becomes chalk today is bad chalk because there's nothing necessarily spectacular. But the argument, of course, in that game is that, wait, Miles Sanders is number one as far as ownership. Is that what you're saying? Which is that DK? Is that Fanduel? That's
DK.
DK. Okay.
It's 5.1K, but there's not good plays on this slate. So I'm very spread out today. I'm very light on the chalky guys and very heavy on the low owned players. It's just that simple. We're essentially playing with a roulette wheel here. So the obvious answer, obviously there's some more craps table. Just go with the underplayed things. It's time to play the don't pass line.
Who's the pass line? Oh, it's just don't pass. People hate the guys that bets on don't pass, right? I'm not a big craps guy, but that's kind of like the mush, right? That you're rooting against the table when you bet don't pass. I think, is that correct?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. I scream at a lot of people every single time that I've had me and other people have had large sums of money down on the don't pass line or on the pass line. And someone comes in and places a $5 bet on the pass line, raise the table minimum, just raise it. We can't have him here.
But when you were saying Miles, I was thinking Miles Gaskin. Maybe it's just a Miles stack week. Miles Sanders, I did pull it up right now as far as DK. We're currently projecting him at 23.8% ownership. Miles Gaskin, another Miles that's not a lot of fun on the roster at 14.87. I should have just said 15. I should have rounded up. But yeah, both Mileses are going to be kind of sort of somewhat chalky to some extent from a running back perspective. Andre, what are your thoughts as far as this? Are you in agreement with myself and Grant? Look, we're all playing with the same pieces. We're all playing with the same ugly pieces. So we're just going to try to make it work. But do you also think the slate is kind of sort of somewhat gross?
It is. I have too many quarterbacks on player pool. That's how gross it is. I can't narrow my quarterback pool down like I want to normally, but it's just because there's so many different options and no one's in a standout spot besides obviously Tom Brady. Other than that, everyone else is just mediocre and literally anyone could have a big game and win and be a good stack. So I think it's just more of a trying to find, like you said, a roulette wheel, trying to find the right combination of plays today and hopefully just land on it and it does well. So I think avoiding some chalk is good, but there's some good chalk and some bad chalk and some reasons why some things are higher on and some aren't. So I think once you sift through that, I think you should be able to be fine on this slate, but it is a tough one other than that, honestly.
Only 10 games, obviously, so the pool gets smushed a little bit. And again, it's a pool of not very appealing names. You mentioned Brady, and I had this conversation yesterday with somebody else. Brady can only really get there one way, and he's been getting there that one way. He's throwing for 300 plus yards, and he's getting three plus touchdowns. He can't, do what Tyrod can do. He can't do what Hurts can do. He can't run. Even we saw Herbert run for a bunch of yards last week. He just can't do that. That's not in his bag, and which makes me think it's something I don't necessarily want. But he's in a dome in a game that, one of the most appealing games on the board. Indy's really, really good as far as shutting down the run, just a good defense in general. Grant, I don't know what to do with Brady, but he is the most popular. Again, this depends where you're shopping. Again, on FanDuel, he's the most popular. On DK, not so much. On Yahoo, I don't believe so either. Just kind of the way the salaries work. But, of course, Brady is still Brady. And I just think that, and of course, if you decide you're going to fade Brady, okay, now who am I going to play instead? And now you're just scratching your head. But because you can't just say, I'm not going to play Brady and he doesn't do well and all of a sudden you win. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, Grant, give me your thoughts as far as Brady. I guess you kind of sort of gave them when you told us you're looking at the two garbage quarterbacks in a Houston Jet game.
Yeah, I'm looking at a lot of garbage quarterbacks. This is a weird week where there's only, 3 priced up quarterbacks. Stafford, Brady, Hurts. There's only 3 guys over 7K. And then right after that, there's Rodgers. And then big drop off, Carson Wentz. So it's a very strange slate. And I mean, Like you can get cheap like we always talked about back in the day, like, oh, it's always a good idea to pay down at quarterback. And then it's more like, oh, maybe we should pay up at quarterback. Yeah, we should pay up at quarterback. Yeah, you pretty much need to pay up at quarterback. This is not one of the weeks. We don't have a whole bunch of high totals. We pretty much have Tampa Bay as a high total, San Francisco as a high total, which let's be honest, we're not happy about playing Jimmy G. New England as a high total. We're not happy about playing Mac Jones. And Indy as a high total. And then you know what the next closest one is? Well, I guess Chargers, but Houston. Houston has one of the highest totals on the board. They have the 6th highest total on the board. It's just a super, super weird slate. And the interesting thing, which do you think this is right? Like Carson Wentz is currently projected at 1.5% ownership.
What's that?
DraftKings.
He is. I think it's gonna come probably a little bit higher on, but I really haven't heard that much talk about Wentz all week so far.
Which is just insane to me. I get that, like Taylor has been doing all. I get that Wentz has not put up big games in the last 2 weeks. I mean, got way out in the lead versus Jacksonville, if I remember correctly, and then Buffalo is one of the toughest matchups on the board. Prior to that, he was putting up 2-3 touchdowns every single game. It's a weird spot going up against Tampa Bay. Yes, I think that Taylor can go off for a massive game. More likely, they're going to have to pass through the air, and they have a high total. Like this team has been good, and it's been largely situational based on what they do in the offense. And this is going to be a time where they're probably going to have to throw the ball a lot. Taylor's going to get dump offs. Hines is going to get dump offs. Pittman's going to have design plays. They have the tight ends that Tampa Bay forces a lot of targets to both tight ends and running backs. So you don't really need great wide receivers going up against Tampa Bay because that's not how their defense is run. It's an interesting spot where you can get him, you can get Zach Wilson, you can get Teddy B, you can get Daniel Jones, and Aaron Rodgers, all at low ownership. So why would I pay that much money for Tom Brady, who's going to be 5-6 times higher owned than any of those other guys?
I got a couple of responses. For starters, I think it'll be higher for Wentz. For no other reason, the price is pretty good. Pittman's going to be fairly popular on DK, so people want to pair Pittman with Wentz. It's probably going to be like around 4 or 5% or something. I mean, still, he's going to be reasonably low owned. And the other part of that is the whole Zach Wilson thing. Like, why not get yourself at least reasonably competent quarterback, or a quarterback that you can make a plausible argument for? And I suppose you can. He's facing the Texans, whatever. But like, there's a lot of cheap guys, like a Wentz or like a Tyrod Taylor, or even like Daniel Jones a little. Look, if you're gonna, why do you have to scrape that?
How do we know that Zach Wilson is completely incompetent?
We don't, but we know his pieces aren't that great. We know he's shown nothing.
Elijah Moore's not good.
I mean, as a collective, jump in here, Andre.
I think Zach Wilson has some good receivers. I just think that Zach Wilson is not ready for the big stage yet. He's not ready to be the starting quarterback to me in of the Jets. That's why I'm surprised that they're not playing him, but obviously everyone being out and sick, I don't think they want him to start. He has no choice but to start. Sorry, but quarterback is it's different. Like, I understand what Grant's saying. Don't want to get overexposed to Tom Brady. Like, I'm right now double the field on him, and I have to calm that down because otherwise he would majority of my court. He would probably have like 90% of Tom Brady. Because he's just in a phenomenal spot. And also, we have to remember, last week Tom Brady was in a great spot against the Washington football team and did not even perform well, and they end up losing that game. So we have to take that into consideration too, because anything can really typically happen on any given Sunday. So other quarterbacks I personally like to try to get to a little bit of. I love Joe Burrow today, going against Pittsburgh.
Uh-oh.
We got Andre frozen on us.
Let me talk to you about Zach Wilson then.
Oh, geez. Can we get Andre back?
Andre, you back?
My back.
I don't want to hear about Zach Wilson anymore.
I mean, he's played, like, look at his schedule. Tennessee, he did pretty well against. Other than that, and Atlanta, he got crushed, but that was over in London. We look at the other matchups: Carolina, Patriots, Denver. Like, what?
Okay.
What quarterback can you?
It just seems unnecessary, basically. I'm not saying he's trash. I don't know for sure he's trash, and that's fair to say. It's a question. But it just seems an unnecessary thing to do because you have guys that are equally as cheap essentially, and equally as far as the ownership essentially. So
I mean, but look at what the quarterbacks have actually done in this offense that aren't named Zach Wilson. Like, they've done well. They've done very well. Mike White absolutely crushed. Joe Flacco had 300 yards passing almost in the last game. Yeah. I can't even remember, what is it, Josh, whatever his name is. He went in there and crushed. Maybe it was
Johnson, the former backup for Tampa Bay or a starter for Tampa Bay. Is that what you're thinking of? Yeah.
Yeah, he did well. He did very well in his limited sample size. Everyone's done well in this offense except for Zach Wilson. And everyone in this offense outside of Zach Wilson has had predominantly good matchups. Like Buffalo, they got crushed. No one did well. Like Mike White didn't do well. Flacco, I guess he did fine for 3 throws when it was out of hand. But like all the quarterbacks in this offense have done well outside of Zach Wilson, who's just had some of the worst matchups you can have in the league. And a lot of the season, like Elijah Moore wasn't fully ready. Crowder was injured for a lot of it. They've had injuries pretty much all season long. Now they're going up against one of the worst teams in the league in a positive game script, and he has 2 guys to throw to, Elijah Moore and Crowder. And both those guys are
Crowder is the second guy in the year 2021. You're excited about Crowder?
In full point PPR, why would I not be?
He's a competent slot receiver, but like he doesn't have this great arsenal to throw to. It's kind of the point that
is Elijah Moore not an absolute stud?
He looks like a really electric rookie, still figuring stuff out, obviously. But yeah, he looks great raw receiver. His tight ends stink. Like Griffin is whatever. It's not a good arsenal to throw to. Like if that's your argument.
What spot today is a good spot? The best 2 quarterbacks on the slate to play are Tom Brady going up against one of the best defenses in the league, and Cam Newton, who was not in the league a few weeks ago.
But like Cam's going to be probably the most popular quarterback on DK today. What's your take on that?
I understand it. He has a rushing upside. He has multiple touchdown upside. He has a lot of weapons. He's going up against Miami. I have no problem with it. I'm going to play some of them, but I'm not happy about it.
Not sure. Andre, are you back with us? And if you are, let me know about Cam. How do you feel about Cam, especially on DK, where we haven't projected to be the most heavily owned quarterback? I think at 14%, not a huge number, but because the cap is pretty tight and the matchup's fine and he's got legs.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Perfect. The matchup is great for Cam. And he's in a fantastic spot. But the thing that gets me a little bit with this and why I'm going personally under on this, because we don't know how the Dolphins defense is going to play. Like, we understand that they're not the best defense that they typically are. But like for pretty much the running backs are giving up only the 30%, and ranked 30th, pretty much dead last in fantasy points given up, 10th for quarterbacks, and 4th for wide receivers. So it's typically a good matchup. So Cam going to like DJ Moore or someone or Robbie Anderson would be typically good, but this defense is still wishy-washy to me, and I think they're getting healthier, if I'm correct. Xavier Howard, is he back? I gotta check to see, but I believe the cornerback is coming back this week. If not, he should be back almost soon. But
we're getting some wonkiness. Hey, Grant, let me ask you this. We kind of referenced in passing Jalen Hurts. How do you feel about Jalen Hurts versus the Giants? Seems like a good matchup, but it's always tricky what you're getting with him because he doesn't throw the ball a ton, but he also can run for 100 and get in the box twice on his legs. And that's, the arm who really cares at that point.
Love stacking him with Saquon.
You trust Saquon?
Yeah. Why wouldn't I?
Well, I mean, he's got multiple body parts and, who knows how much they're going to push him and that offense. They got rid of the Clapper. Garrett's gone. I don't know what to expect from that, but maybe they'll try something different. Maybe they'll try to establish the run. Who knows what? Do you have any thoughts as far as that? I guess Saquon's your guy. Like you're getting a bit of a discount. I'll give you that for the name brand. He's got a nice price all around the industry, to be honest, but I'm a little bit cautious with him, but we've certainly seen flashes. We've seen him break slates before, but that was,
and he's also going to get the ball dumped off. They're missing almost all their wide receiving core. I mean, Shepard's out, Tony's out. They got Galladay, but Galladay seems like he's just not great this year. And they've got Evan Ingram. So what are they going to do? They're probably going to dump the ball off to Saquon like they have in the past. many, many times. And guess what? He can do a lot in the recent game. He can break off any run. The dude has legs that aren't the size of my torso.
He does.
Yeah.
If only the Giants had a receiver the likes of Jamison Crowder, they would probably throw to him a ton.
They do. His name is Sterling Shepard, and they generally do when he's playing.
Or Darius Slayton.
Yeah, like it's a good spot for Saquon. Like he got 70% of the snap share last week, if I remember correctly. And the only reason he didn't do a ton was, guess what? He went up against Tampa Bay. Prior to getting injured, 13, 16, 13, and 10. Those were his carries to go along with 6, 7, 3, and 3 targets. They're going to use him in this offense. Kitchen is at the helm now, if I remember correctly, right?
I'm sorry, I was reading the chat. What were you saying? Somebody in chat said, keep the ownership screen up. That's better than the 3 faces, which I don't disagree. Hey, and you know what? You can use that ownership stuff at your own leisure. Get yourself $10 off your first month of RG Premium. We'll go ahead and drop the link in chat as well. If you want just football, have that at just football. Or you can get all the sports. There you go. $10 either way. Go ahead, Grant. What were you saying? What were you asking me?
Kitchen's at the helm now. He's probably calling plays. He wasn't a bad play caller prior to becoming head coach. He just was a terrible head coach.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know if he's a good. I have no idea. I don't pretend to be that.
Do you think he's worse than the Clapper?
Probably not. Yeah, but
there
I
you
don't
go.
know. Yeah, I can't sit here and give you a take on that.
Saquon's a guy that was what 9K most of last year.
Sure. For sure. He was one of the best.
2 years ago, I guess. He was injured all last year. Like, guy is good, and like if we're assuming that Hurts is going to make value, we're most likely assuming he's either going to get multiple rushing TDs or he's going to be slinging the ball in the fourth. So what happens if he has to sling the ball in the fourth? That generally means that Barkley's going to be rushing the ball a lot. It's perfect correlation that I don't think a lot of people are going to do. And you don't really need to play Hurts with anyone outside of Goddard or Smith, and you don't even need to play him with those guys.
You can play him naked, I think. It's okay. You don't have to, but you can't.
Yeah.
Dre's
back.
Dre, what's up? Anything as far? We just talked some other quarterbacks. We got to move on and talk running backs, Dre. But if there are any quarterback takes you want to get out there, by all means, fire away.
I'm like I said, Teddy B. I'm playing some Teddy B, some Tyrod Taylor, Joe Burrow, a little bit of everyone. Kirk Cousins, Jimmy G, a little bit of everyone, pretty much this week.
So just list all the quarterbacks. Me too.
Favorite receiver you have that you're going to pair with Teddy B? Who's your favorite receiver? Or I guess Fant. Want to go tight end?
Oh yeah, I'll probably go Noah Fant or Cortland Sutton.
And your favorite receiver for Burrow, or Joe, as Grant likes to call him?
Or Chase.
All right. Let's talk about running backs. I'm going to go ahead and pull up our ownership projection. And as Grant alluded to, at least on DK, Miles Sanders is projected to be our most popular running back in the slate, 23.8%, which is kind of held in check to some degree. CMC is expensive, but not fully expensive just yet. We're not seeing the 10K zone, just 9K on DK. And we know we could be a PPR monster for sure. I mean, Myles Gaskin is still in our life, and I presume he's still going to get a chunk of that stuff going on there. That they did pick up the running back from Houston, but I don't think he's playing today. If you have all the money in the world, why not spend up on a guy, John Taylor? I know the matchup's not necessarily great, but we saw him break that Buffalo defense down last week, and the upside is there for sure. In the late games, you got Eckler, certainly interesting for tournaments, Cook as well. And then I think we're just kind of sitting on that Dillon news. Dillon becomes a phenomenal play. Andre, if we get Jones out, Dillon is not fully priced for a guy that might get 80% of the chunk as far as the snaps back there. Big game for Green Bay, so there is incentive to bring Jones back, but also there's a bye week next week, and maybe they're thinking long term. I feels like a true 50-50 as far as if Jones is going to play or not, and my lineups are kind of in limbo because of it, and I'm sort of like planning on potential swaps later on. How are you handling that situation as far as Dillon?
Well, because Aaron Jones is only $100 more, I think it's quite simple a little bit. I'm just gonna make sure any lineups that I have with AJ Dillon have at least $100 left over in space, roster space. If I need it's that way, it's just in case Aaron Jones is in, I'll just swap all my AJ Dillon to Aaron Jones and go from there. Because I think that either one of those running backs is a good play today on the slate. So I think that would make it a little bit easier. And either way, I think you'll get either one of them at low ownership too as well.
Interesting, because I haven't thought about that. I thought like if Joe, like when they're both there, it's just kind of they both kind of eat off each other, and I don't think I want either. Is kind of where I'm at, but like I hear it, and I don't really know what they do. Like, are they going to kind of baby Jones? Like they get like 55, 45, like a true.
I don't think he's going to play.
I don't think he's going to play either. But even if he does, but see, for instance, if he does play and you don't want to go to Aaron Jones, like I would want to go to Aaron Jones a little bit. You can also go down and get Henderson at 5,800 too as well. So
or the best running back play on the slate.
Cook, Mitchell, Williams.
No, yeah, you said it. It's Mitchell.
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell. Well, yeah.
Does he get to catch a football one of these days? Is that going to happen? Or
doesn't matter if he gets 30 runs going up against one of the worst run defenses in the league in a game script that's probably going to be good, which Minnesota's always in close games.
I just hate the San Francisco running back situation, but like
we're talking about the chalkiest running back on the slate being who?
Yeah, no,
what does he not do?
Miles Sanders, yeah, which is weird because he probably should. Yeah, and then there is other guys lurking for Philadelphia as well to some degree. And the Giants are, it's a good matchup, but he just came back off injury. And I was surprised how much they gave him. And Boston Scott and Gainwell are lurking as well.
They didn't give him that much. They just happened to run the ball 45 times.
The other thought, by the way, is like both the New England guys are kind of sort of questionable, and it feels like they can just field anybody against Tennessee today who's just rolling out their skill position players. I don't know how many you can name off the dome. Skill position, we're using the term loosely. For Tennessee,
for New England?
No, for Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, not many.
Yeah. I mean, Westbrook, Akina, and the likes of Foreman and Hilliard, Jeff Swaim. I feel like if it's possible we get one of these New England guys out, like either Harris or Stevenson, and then whoever that gets scratched is fully unleashed the other guy.
Yeah.
I'm prepared for that at 11:30. Who knows how that's going to go down?
I'd honestly rather have Harris scratched than Stevenson.
Are you with me? Do you think one of these guys don't? Because they're both questionable, correct? One's got a neck.
I don't know. We'll see when injury reports come out in half hour?
Yeah, 11:30. We'll know. Obviously, they'll break the show. They'll break it in the next show. Let y'all know. But yeah, Andre, what do you have as far as thoughts on New England? Because it feels like a game where New England controls the ball for 40 minutes and just runs it down their throats.
I agree with that. I just don't know which running back to play until I get the injury news. I don't have no lean which way or which of who plays, who doesn't play. I've been trying to figure that out. But we know how New England likes to keep things close to the vest a little bit too until the last possible minute. So I would have a little bit of whatever running back starts and is going to be playing, honestly, because that guy probably is going to be
We're getting that funky Wi-Fi again. Hey, Grant, talk to me about Myles Gaskin. I really don't want to play any of him. But he's cheap on Yahoo, really, really cheap on Yahoo. And by the way, we should mention Yahoo is running back their contest today. $200,000 overlay. If you're not playing at Yahoo, use the promo code here at Rotogrinders. It's called Grinders25 for a free $25 bonus in your first deposit. There's also a $50,000 free roll going on there. And lineup HQ, you know what we're showing off right now on the screen? The lineup HQ is free. You guys can use that right now. Anybody, not non-premium members, anybody, just go ahead and use that. And if you're just playing on DK, if you're just playing a super draft anywhere else, you can kind of sort of piece it together and figure it out. But you can pull up the lineup HQ and you can use that yourself free today. I believe last I saw, there's still plenty of overlay in that contest, which is completely absurd. I think Gaskin's $14 on Yahoo today. Yeah, so not even 30,000 of the 40,000 spots have been claimed. Again, $1 million prize pool. They're only collecting $800,000. There's $200,000 in guaranteed overlay, potentially more if it does not fill.
All right, maxed out.
But yeah, I'm going to do it after the show. I've got 10 now, and I was kind of waiting for information to trickle through, and I was hoping I can plug in some stuff when the actives and inactives come out. Grant, give me a take as far as Gaskin. I don't want to be over the field on Myles Gaskin. I just don't want to do that.
Well, he's getting 20 some odd touches a game.
Yeah, not all touches are created equal, man.
No, but one thing we know is that, or one thing we've been told is running backs don't matter, and all that matters is volume.
They matter unless your name is Myles Gaskin or Tony Jones.
He's not bad. That offensive line is bad.
Well, the line's terrible. Yeah, it's not necessarily his fault. Yeah, that's fair. But
yeah, it doesn't matter. If he's going to get that much volume, he's still a good play. I don't know if I want to play him with this ownership, but I have no problem with playing him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Smart guy here.
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to play him begrudgingly.
You're going to play Ty Johnson too, so
it's funny you mentioned. Give me some thoughts on those guys, like the Ty Johnson of the world. Him and Tevin Coleman are going to split that backfield to some degree in the Jets. Houston got rid of at least one of their running backs. Now they're down to basically David Johnson and Rex Burkhead. Are they kind of sort of somewhat interesting, or it's just
sprinkling them in? I hate myself for it.
I'm doing
more
that
so
too.
On Super Draft. They're 2x, so you know what? One of them falls into the end zone. Boom, they made value.
So if you sort by just how teams give up fantasy points, right, by position, that's it. Just the Jets on average give up 33.87 Fanduel Yahoo points per week. 33.87 per game. The second worst,
close to the second.
The second worst team is your Seattle Seahawks at 26 and change. It's so insane how bad they've been against running backs. But now it's David Johnson and Rex Burkhead, and one of them's going to get there. Yeah, but one of them's going to get there. I think one of them gets there, and yeah, I'm not happy about it. Andre, do you have a take as far as these gross names we're throwing out there?
Yeah, I kind of like it. David Johnson today.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think I'm also going to try to have some Rex Burkhead as well, just so that way we can, just so that way I can get a little bit different and have something that's something that everyone doesn't have. Sorry about that. And then Myles Gaskin that we talked about before, he's a good play. Carolina's been giving up a lot of rushing yards the past couple of weeks, according to our gridiron IQ. I like him as a play, but like Grant said, I'm not going to be over the field on him. I'm going to be a little bit under, but I think he's a good play. I'd rather get over on like David Johnson, Rex Burkhead. This like we were talking about before. This week is just a roulette week where different plays might win in weird plays. Ty Johnson is a good play also as well going against Houston. I'm just worried about how the touches are going to look for him versus Tevin Coleman. Like, are they going to give Tevin Coleman more touches versus him or not? And then also, like, I like my running backs also be able to catch some balls on the backfield, and we know that that's not what Zach Wilson does. He likes to try to get the ball down the field.
Do we know that?
He's on the field as in running backs. His running backs can be used in a short
Gosh darn your internet, Dre.
You guys can't hear me again?
Now
it's going in and out. I think it's back in.
I'm getting an Ethernet cord after the show. So, but yeah, I think Ty Johnson, I think he is in play. I just would be a little bit cautious of the workload and how much and with Zach Wilson passing the ball in the backfield a little bit.
I just want to read whoever does the blurbs for Yahoo, like in the player blurb for David Johnson. This guy hates him so much. Johnson is incapable of being taken seriously as a runner at this point. He's Larry Centers playing running back, and we're not sure if we're talking about late career Larry Centers or Larry Centers circa today when we say that. This guy was like a fullback from the 90s. He despises David Johnson is the point. Whoever does the blurb for Yahoo, I thought it was pretty funny. One more name I want to throw your way, Grant. We got to move on and talk about some receivers, but I think James Robinson feels interesting.
Yep. Good
and
play.
I like the stack with the defense as well. It's so gross. The players for Jacksonville guys, Houston guys, some Jets.
How is James Robinson gross?
Well, he's wearing a Jaguars uniform. It's just he does the stink of the organization. He catch some shrapnel, It's not his
guy's
fault.
averaging like 18 points over the last 7 weeks.
Yeah, I'm just the overall stink of wearing that jersey is the problem. But yeah,
which is why people aren't going to play him as much as they should. Although people are playing him a lot.
I'm gonna play him. Yeah. Do you have anything else as far as running backs, or shall I move on to talk about some receivers? We gotta get going. We want to knock out some questions from chat, obviously, as well. What up, chat? We've not said officially hello to the chat.
Main thing to reiterate: don't be afraid of playing AJ Dillon or Eli Mitchell. They're questionable, which is going to suppress their ownership. And guess what? It's the easiest mass swap in the world, from Dillon to Jones or Eli Mitchell to Jeff Wilson. They're both 100
Schefter
apart.
reported yesterday that Mitchell's playing, by the way.
Yes,
Mitchell,
I know, but still, like I'm saying, if something weird happens, it's real simple. Just mass swap.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a very much of a good swap slate. There's only 3 games, but there's 3 as this slate goes, pretty appealing games. There's some Chargers pieces we haven't really talked about. We'll talk about Keenan Allen in a second, obviously. I guess that's a good place to start because on DK, Keenan Allen currently our highest projected own wide receiver. Right there is Chris Godwin as well in that shootout or anticipated shootout versus in the dome versus Indiana. And then Brandon Cooks, there it is. Brandon Cooks he's really, really cheap on Yahoo. He's really cheap on DK. He's facing the Jets. And we talk about Deontay Johnson, we haven't talked about just yet, but he's a little bit too cheap on DK and pretty good price on Yahoo as well. Grant, talk about those receivers. Anybody else that's kind of popping for you?
All fine. Like, they're all heavily owned. So I don't really care too much. Like, if they fit, they fit. If they don't, they don't. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, the better wide receivers are likely in the slightly lower owned range. I mean, Jerry Jeudy is far too heavily owned, but I don't know if I want to go there. But we got Justin Jefferson, who's like the payups, Justin Jefferson, Adams, and Kupp, all are fantastic plays today. Absolutely love them all. We got guys like Jamar Chase, who's probably not expensive enough, and he has been destroying the world. We forget that because he hasn't really done anything great in like 3 weeks, but prior to that, he has 30 some odd point ceiling in a divisional game. Jameson Crowder is going to get a bunch of passes. Elijah Mitchell actually looks good. Kenny Galladay is the main piece in that offense. Claypool always has multi-touchdown upside. Adam Thielen has caught more touchdown passes than 95% of the league over the last year and a half. Robbie Anderson seems like he's going to get targeted more with Cam Newton in the lineup. I mean, he won't get targeted more. He'll actually be able to catch the ball because Darnold isn't throwing the ball to him. OBJ could be heavily involved in this offense. No one's really going to play him. He may have been trash over in Cleveland. He may still be trash, but he's number 2 in that offense.
And he came off a bye week, right? Maybe, acclimate himself to that whatever system they have going on there. And I do think he's a little bit interesting. As much as I don't like Beckham, and I'm with you. I'm not really certain he's still good, but I do think he's interesting and cheap enough. And you mentioned, Kupp is a guy people aren't going to play because, salary is tough. There's not a lot of cheapies out there, and he's really, really expensive, like 9.6K on DK. I think he's 41 on Yahoo. He's well above everybody else. Andre, we threw out a bunch of names as far as receivers. Feel free to grab add on, yes, no, or just throw out some new names as far as receivers.
All those guys that Grant pretty much listed off, I like getting some in tournaments today for sure. You said Brandon, did you mention Michael Pittman?
We mentioned him in passing before, but yeah.
I think he's just too cheap for the role he's going to be in with Tampa Bay's corners not being that great, or still being injured and hurt. So I like Michael Pittman Jr. today a lot, even though I know he's going to be obviously owned correctly. I think Adam Thielen is someone that Grant mentioned before. I think that's someone we should look at to get to a lot of. Kirk Cousins has been playing well, and we know that everyone's going to now target Justin Jefferson a lot at the receiver position. But we need to not forget about Adam Thielen and him being able to go off and have these big monster games, because that's what used to happen before Justin Jefferson got there. So we could be in store for like what happened last week, a multiple touchdown game and a big game for Justin Jefferson. Thielen can have the same game this week, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. Jamar Chase was probably my favorite under-owned wide receiver. He's too cheap, and he's only going to be 8-9% owned. I'm going to be at least double the field on that. He stands out to me as one of the top receivers to me on the slate. I don't like the ownership on Jerry Jeudy. I think he's a little bit too. I think he's just a little bit too over-owned. Like I said, I really get to Cortland Sutton, or even if you want to roll out Tim Patrick there, possible in there too. I think he's works out great. Just a matchup that he's going to have in the slot against one of the better cornerbacks in the league, who's only given up actually 1 touchdown. To me, doesn't fit. Jerry Jeudy.
We almost made it.
Almost.
Deebo Samuel's really, really expensive in some places. Fanduel's got a pretty decent price, but like he's receiving, he's probably the best running back for San Francisco as well. He's just a really, really good football player. He's just pretty expensive. Grant, there's not a lot of cheap players that are interesting at the receiver position.
Keelan Cole.
Oh boy, that is not the name I was expecting. He's a Jet.
Cole.
Am I back?
Yep. Just talk about Keelan Cole until your internet goes out.
Well, Keelan Cole, I don't have my player pool, honestly, so I'm not playing him. So I don't know.
Why don't you have the number 3 receiver in the Jets in your player pool?
Because he's the number 3 receiver. I like getting Jamison Crowder or Eli Mitchell, and as far as wide receivers for the Jets, which I think, like I said, they're in a great spot today as well. Tyler Boyd is still a little bit too cheap, I think, too. We can target him. And all he needs is just the targets and take him into the house. Russell Gage, he's only going to be 3.4% owned, and I think he works great either by himself or in the or with a stack with Matt Ryan. But it's Jacksonville. He should be, if he can't score against Jacksonville, then I don't know, then maybe we should not be playing him anymore after this week in DFS.
You're not going to be playing him after this week.
I'm going to take my chances on him and see what he can do this week. I think he's in a phenomenal spot where he should be able to take advantage of that Jacksonville secondary and the Odell Beckham Van Jefferson receiver rings that you talked about. I'm going to be well over on Van Jefferson compared to OBJ, but I like OBJ still today. He should be more confident with the playbook, and that bye week should help them a lot and improve that. I think he'll probably get about 6 or 7 targets this game too, but I think Van Jefferson is still the way to go because he already knows the playbook and he's going to probably slide to the number 2 position, while OBJ will be the number 3.
I'll throw out another cheapie. We got to move on, talk about some tight ends, knock out some questions in chat. But Chenault on DK, like if you're looking for cheap guys, he's another one of those we're all kind of waiting to do something. And there's been the talk of potential him running the ball a little bit too. We'll see how that goes as far as getting him, manufacturing him some touches. And Cortland Sutton is $10. He's the floor on Yahoo. Grant, that's okay for the floor, right? The minimum. Yeah. He's definitely, I assume he's in your player pool. He's in mine as well. Tight ends, Grant, we got Gronk he's got a good price on DK. Yahoo is a little bit expensive. Looked good in his first game back. Friermuth is kind of a thing. If you need to save some salary on DK, I'm actually looking, God help me, Evan Ingram. The tight ends against Philadelphia is a thing, and how many guys are still left for the Giants? No tight ends, basically. Kittle on Fanduel just is very easy to make work if you want to make that happen. He's not so bad on Yahoo either, $24. What do you have as far as tight ends this week, Grant?
Arnold's not going to be nearly owned enough. Pitts is not going to be owned enough. Gronk is a fantastic play. Not really a fan of Cook. It's kind of it. Tight ends. Like the chalkier guys are generally the guys projected to do better, with tight ends generally a wasteland. But if you want to get a guy that's not nearly played enough, it's Arnold.
Some of your favorite tight ends, Andre?
Sorry, I just got a lot of Jonathan Taylor for some reason. I like
that's not so bad. You can do worse than
that. I like getting to Tyler Higbee, low ownership. Dan Arnold, because I know he's going to be targeted a lot as well. friermuth, I like getting to him with Jared, with Ebron being out. He's someone I'm thinking we should target. Noah Fant as well, just because since I think Jared Judy's not really going to be much of a factor. I think he'll be like the second to third targeted guy on that team for sure. And I know Cardi mentioned this on the Blitz. Farrell Brown against the Jets. I think but
and he's out.
So I heard Farrell Brown, by the way, and I bet him over on Prize Picks like 13.5 yards or something like that. I thought that
you are wild.
He's going to get at least 20. I think
he'll get there. He'll definitely get there.
Yeah, I thought that number was a little soft on Farrell Brown, but that's just kind of sort of where I'm at. This is the names we're throwing out there. Trying to see if there's anybody else that's worth a mention. Oh, so these numbers can be a little bit noisy depending on who you played against and stuff like that. But we mentioned the best matchup in all football as far as tight ends has been the Eagles. So Ingram, especially on DK.
Gross.
This I know it's very gross. I don't want to be the guy that touted Ingram, but I'm going to be playing some on DK. But the second best is Fant versus the Chargers. Chargers have been yielding fantasy points to that's the way to get them is via the tight end or the ground. Grant, do you got anything else as far as tight ends, or shall we we're gonna entertain some questions?
We're moving on.
Do you have any defensive takes? We don't really talk a lot of defense, but like you're gonna see, especially on DK, a lot of Houston because they're very cheap and they're facing the Jets. And despite the fact the Jets have Jamison Crowder, their offense is not necessarily great, and the great Zach Wilson too.
You mean the Jets, who have the 4th most passing yards per game over the last 3 games? Sorry,
That's
first.
Not a noisy stat at all.
First.
Not a noisy stat in any way.
First.
I like the Cincinnati Bengals is a good one, I think, because we know Ben Roethlisberger tends to picks on the road. So I like them a lot today.
Yeah, I like the Jags defense a little bit too against that Falcons offense, which is dreadful. Like that, they're a mess. Matt Ryan just can't move anymore. You've got anything else as far as defense? Let's just knock out questions from the chat. Well, let me ask you this, Andre. Do you have a favorite stack or a game stack or just a general correlation that you have as far as this slate?
Joe Burrow is probably one of my favorite stacks to Jamar Chase. I also like game stack wise would be besides the Tampa Bay game, I like the game and Kirk Cousins and Jimmy G. I'm gonna have a good amount of too.
Grant, same question.
What was the question?
Favorite game stack?
Jets, Jets.
Grant, I got a question for you. In general, you're going to be going for basement running backs to be able to pay up for wide receivers or the other way around. It's weird. Like we didn't talk about Devontae Adams. Like, of course, Devontae Adams is a great play, as always, is a great play.
I'm playing a lot of them.
Yeah. So like your general builds today, are you considering like cheap running backs and spending up on receivers? Do you have like a thought as far as that?
I'm game stacking today. That's what I'm doing. You're
getting what now?
I'm game stacking today. That's what I'm doing.
Alex got a question for you. I'm not sure if we still have Andre with us, so I'll go ahead and ask Grant. Okay, Andre. Alex wants to know, is the slate small enough for a 3-2 onslaught in, say, a 2,000 to 2,500 person field? Yeah, like a lot of this is probably just going to stink. You think?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. That's small enough where you can make that work.
If you're going to do a 3-2, hypothetically, Andre, what game do you think you would select, or a couple games you might consider?
San Francisco, the Jets game, and the Tampa Bay game, and sneakily the Packers game too. So I don't know if everyone's going to be on Aaron Rodgers like that.
Well, I mean, the Packers game, right? You basically know like who's going to get it done, right? It's going to be Rodgers, especially if Jones doesn't play Dillon and probably Adams, and then it's Kupp and Henderson. You know, but they're kind of expensive, of course. You can make that stuff work with pieces from Houston and the Jets.
Yeah,
we didn't mention any of the Tennessee guys, but like they're really, really cheap too. Like they're going to run offensive plays. I'm not sure how successful they'll be. All right, let's knock out some more questions here from the chat. Grant, Yahoo tournaments. Do you like Debo or Kupp straight up?
Kupp.
Man, I like them both, but Kupp's like $4 more or something like that. Andre, can you stack Ty God? It says Ty God and Cooks. Yeah, of course you can. That's gonna be a popular stack, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes. FanDuel cash thoughts on Melvin Gordon.
No.
I think he's interesting. I guess he's playable.
Play Eli Mitchell.
Yeah.
Tournaments, but don't play him today.
Yeah, or even Dillon's probably the same price. I'm not sure if Gordon's price he'd even like pop up in like my stuff. I don't think you play Gordon for cash. Andre, DK tournaments today. James Robinson. We kind of touched on him. Your thoughts as far as James Robinson, yay or nay?
I like him today a lot.
Grant, DK tournaments, thoughts on Nico Collins, who I believe is questionable, right? He's not officially playing football today?
No, he's fine though.
Yeah, if he doesn't play, are we looking at anybody like Chris Connolly or Chris Moore or Amendola? We're not. I mean, probably. You mentioned like the Pharaoh Brown thing on DK where the cap is tight. I think he's playable at 2.8. Like, I don't think he's unplayable. He's not somebody you're happy about, but if you need to flat out punt it, you go to the floor, essentially, I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about it, but I think I'm willing to do it. Actives and inactives come out in about 11 minutes or so. Cordell Patterson, somebody that may or may not play. I assume he's going to play. I would keep an eye on as far as what's going on in that New England situation. We may have either Harris or Stevenson ruled out. If one of them's ruled out, unleash the other one. Andre, we got to step aside and make way for Ben and Erik. Ben and Erik do a really good, deep galaxy brain conversation regarding the slate, regarding a tournament perspective, and it's something that's is definitely worth listening to because they're going to point something out to you. They'll say, "Hey, all this stuff is supposed to happen, but what if it doesn't?" Then let's get weird. This is a great let's get weird slate for sure. Andre, give me one play you're heavily on, one play, that's going to win the Million Maker, your favorite play. Somebody's just going to take it all down today. Be as ambitious as you want to be.
I think of Joe Burrow stack with Jamar Chase takes it all down today. And I'm going to also say Jonathan Taylor will be in the winning lineup as well.
Grant, same question. And also
Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Keelan Cole are in the Million Maker lineup.
I just like this comment in chat. I'd rather watch a 2-man podcast. I don't know who they want to cut one of us. I'm not really sure which one.
Which one? Yeah. Which one?
It's definitely get rid of Dean.
Well, you know what? There is a 2-man podcast coming up right after us, and you're going to hear Beer Maker's fan his picks, a 6-pack. That's going to be the bridge to the next show. We were not unable to get to all your questions there in chat, unfortunately. Barkley or Robinson? Quickly, Grant.
Barkley.
That was Grant. That was Andre. You guys with the chat. Hit that like button. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Hang out for the next hour and 40 minutes. Actives and inactives come out in 10 minutes. Devin behind the glass producing. Appreciate that. That was football. I was Dean. We're out of here. Hold it.
Here back at the Fantasy Bar, 6 plays for you for week 12 on Fanduel and Draftkings, including some of my favorite mid-range plays, a few guys that are underpriced on Draftkings, one of my favorite correlations, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who we talking about? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 12 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Appreciate you guys for stopping by and hanging out in the Fantasy Bar here, talking some Week 12 on FanDuel and DraftKings. Thank you, as always, for checking out the video. Now, before we get into the plays, first of all, make sure you click that thumbs up button. You click that subscribe button, get notified when these videos are going out. We got basketball going on. We got a Yahoo NFL video. Make sure you check that out. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the Thanksgiving Day video. Point is, make sure you subscribe and get notified when these videos release. Also, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer. Tons of sports betting information, trends, history. Look at odds across all different sports books to find the best price. And of course, premium picks from some of your favorite Rotogrinders personalities. I'll be giving away some of my favorite premium NFL bets over there as well. Check it out today. scoresandodds.com/beer. And lastly, head over to fanduel.com/OG. Come play against Notorious Head Chopper and myself in our weekly single entry $7 buy-in with season-long payouts. Somebody going to walk away with $5,000. Also, a shot to win some free Rotogrinders premium. Go and check it out today at fanduel.com/OG. All right, let's get into the plays here for week 12. We got Thanksgiving behind us. Still got a nice slate of games here. Let's get started at the running back position with James Robinson of the Jaguars. So running back kind of ugly here this week. We don't have a lot of the higher end expensive guys, but James Robinson really stands out as a guy I want to get into a lot of lineups here this week against Atlanta, especially over on DraftKings. Just $6,200 here for a workhorse running back like Robinson feels too cheap. Now this guy been phenomenal. As bad as this season has been for the Jacksonville Jaguars and the ups and the downs that we've seen out of the Marvin Jones of the world, Trevor Lawrence, Robinson been very consistent, especially of late. We're talking touchdowns in 6 of his last 7 games. So in a very bad offense, this guy is still finding the end zone. And in those games where he has found the end zone, he's averaging 20 DraftKings points a game. So an easy 3 to 4X on this salary over on DK. And the matchup here, ideal. Atlanta bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed to the running back position so far this season. James Robinson in a good spot here. We got a close spread, high total, ugly game, no doubt. I think James Robinson can have a big game for us here for our DFS lineups. All right, let's stay in the mid-range at the wide receiver position with Michael Pittman Jr. of the Colts. So nice leverage spot here. This game going to be popular. Jonathan Taylor going to be very popular, even in a tough matchup here with Tampa. Thrived in a tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. So I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor not a good play here. What I'm saying is if everybody's going to go to Taylor, let's look at the passing game here for the Indianapolis Colts. Also, some recency bias could set in here with Pittman's had a couple down games here after running off about 5, 6, 7 straight productive, big games. He's had a couple down games, so people probably not feeling as great about Pittman here. And we know Tampa Bay comes to town. There will be points in this game. The Colts may be forced to go to the air a little bit more. A, they may be playing from behind. B, that Tampa run defense, if they get Vea back, very, very legit. So they may have to throw more than they want to. We also have a big total here, as you'd expect, at over 52. Love this spot for the Colts. Love this spot to bounce back for Michael Pittman Jr. All right, let's go to the quarterback position next. A guy that is way too cheap on DraftKings, and that's Cam Newton of Carolina. All the way down to 5,600, so not quite as cheap as he was last week at 5,100, but this price has not risen enough. FanDuel up at 8K, probably where he should be. I don't hate him over there, but 5,600 on Cam Newton on DraftKings feels like a guy you want to play in your cash games. You can also look to in your tournaments. Now, last week looked phenomenal, very accurate throwing the ball, got it done on the ground as well. So he gives you that solid floor with that rushing ability. Saw him run the ball 10 times, find the end zone. That's not going to slow down here. And also that GPP ceiling is there. We've seen this guy have massive games, multiple touchdowns, rushing, passing. And against Miami, we could certainly see that. They are bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. Now, pairing, I don't think you necessarily have to pair up Cam Newton, but options, you could pair him with Christian McCaffrey, gather up all those Carolina touchdowns, or even a guy like DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. We're going to leave him naked here for the video. I think you can roll him out that way in your lineups as well. Lots of ways you can go this week with Cam Newton against the Miami Dolphins. All right, the mid-range plays continue at wide receiver with Brandon Ayuk of the 49ers. So here's another game I really want to get a lot of exposure to. I think this one could be back and forth. We could see some fireworks, potential shootout here in this game, and Ayuk really starting to turn it on here of late, even with limited passing volume for the San Francisco team. We know they want to run the ball a ton. This guy's getting the targets. In fact, caught all of his targets last week, 7 or more targets now in 3 of the last 4 games. And again, the matchup here is what really stands out. Minnesota has struggled all season long trying to contain wide receivers. We saw it again last week with Devontae Adams. Is Brandon Ayuk Devontae Adams? No, he is not. The point, the focus, going to be on Kittle, on Debo, on that running game. It's going to leave Brandon Ayuk, and his ability to make explosive plays really plays well in a GPP format. So again, too cheap here on both sides. Brandon Ayuk in a smash spot this week against the Minnesota Vikings. All right, let's get you a value play at the tight end position. We're going with Pat Friermuth of Pittsburgh. So I really like the spot for him to bounce back. We've seen some decent games, found the end zone last week, but Erik Ebron being back in that lineup really zapped into a lot of Friermuth's snaps, routes, everything. I mean, last week, only 18 routes run against the Chargers, but did see 7 targets on those routes. So Erik Ebron looking doubtful here this week. So I think we get a really nice bounce back here from Pat Friermuth, who was really trending up in the routes run. We saw that fall down to under 60% last week. I think you get a nice bounce back here against the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's been a struggle for Cincy over the last month or so against tight ends. We're talking second most fantasy points allowed to this position over that time frame. So this game should stay close, competitive. Friermuth, I'm expecting to continue to be targeted a lot. Grab them while we can here at these cheap prices. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for week 12. But before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest. Free to play, easy to play. This is a thank you to you guys for hanging out here in the fantasy bar and checking out the video. All you got to do, get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points on DraftKings for my favorite play of the week. The closest guess is going to win themselves a free month of Rotogrinders Premium, a chance to check everything out behind the scenes. And if you are already a loyal subscriber, we'll send you a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. While you're there, let me know who your favorite play of the week is. Who's your Beast of the Week? Sound off in that comment section, guys. Make sure you've hit that thumbs up button. All right, let's take a look. My favorite play for week 12. You know him as the Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. We owe you one more running back. I promised you some correlation. We're going to go to the other side of that Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game. And once again, roll with running back Joe Mixon, this week's Beast of the Week. So we had Mixon in this spot last week, was very good to us. Going to go right back to him once again. So we're running it back, a little doubleheader here with Joe Mixon as back-to-back Beast of the Week. But again, another good spot here for Joe Mixon. I get it. Pittsburgh.
What is going on, guys? And welcome to another edition of my dogs are excited. I don't know if you can hear them in the background already running around in the office next to me. GPP Final Takes. I am your host, as always, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Beimfohr. I am joined also, as always, by Ben Gretch at Yards for Gretch on Twitter and the author of the Stealing Signals newsletter, where every single week I still don't know how you're doing it, especially at this point in the season. And we'll definitely get to reasons on this slate as to why it's important. So we're all thankful for you breaking down every fantasy relevant player, changes and things that happen week to week, deciding what is signal and noise so we can really figure out, whether to chase the box scores, right? Or maybe where there's some aberrations in some outcomes. And this week, I think it's super important because if you're on DFS Twitter or you're listening to content or anything, the overwhelming theme, which we were talking about a little bit pre-show, is this slate is absolutely gross. It is so gross. There's maybe one or two games where you're like kind of excited. Packers Rams is certainly a good real life football game. The rest is like a lot of the worst teams in the NFL. We have none of the elite quarterbacks, right? No Mahomes, no Josh Allen, no Dak, etc. No Lamar. And the player pool is tough. It's tough. And so we're going to have to get into some of these gross plays. I was telling Ben before the show, my favorite game is Jets Texans, which we will get into. And I think I'm going to get him on board. I think we'll get on board with that. But Ben, how are you feeling? Are you the grossness of the slate? Is that kind of your overall theme?
Well, it's funny when you came on before the show. I was like, yeah, I don't like the slate, but you're all excited. You're like, I love these gross slates. But like from like a macro perspective, we've seen over the last month, 6 weeks, a lot of unders hit. We've seen the game total start to come down. That happens every season, but we've also seen the too deep stuff. We've seen scoring ceilings kind of taken away by sort of the defense counterpunch this year relative to 2020, really, really fertile scoring environment last year. Right. And so it's all kind of come to a head on this slate for me, where we have fewer games. We had the 3 Thanksgiving games. Yeah. Not a lot of high totals. I don't like any of the chalk. Also, all the pivot plays, I don't feel very comfortable with any of them either. It's all bad plays. And so we're definitely going to talk through it. But for me, it's like, I think the worst thing you could do in this slate personally is kind of chase the popular plays, because I think you could poke holes on anything. I mean, there's a few exceptions, obviously, like Christian McCaffrey. I mean, if you want to play him, play him. But you can poke holes on basically any of the guys that are going to be popular, and like whenever that's the case, then you just don't want to play them in tournaments, right? You want to be off of that. Yep. It needs to be really, really solid for you to be playing into heavy ownership. At the same time, like, you can poke holes in everything that no one else is playing. It's not like the field's just wrong. It's just that there's nothing, right. There's nothing fun.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I like, that's why, like, I'm getting excited for literally a game between like the 2 worst teams in the NFL that like is going to have like the lowest ratings of the year, aside from DFS players. Like, nobody wants to watch Jets, Texans, right? But on this particular slate, as you kind of outlined, there's not a lot. Like there isn't a lot to like really like love, right? And there's fine enough projections, but I bet if you would go on this slate and compare to like most of the year, right? When we got, now this game dudded, a lot of these games ended up dudding, but like we get the Chiefs Cowboys, we get, Dearness Johnson when Chubb is out, we get Mark Ingram, we get Ramondre, we get all of these things, and you get these incredible, projections. Remember, we would have like free, like min price Ricky Seals Jones, like silly things like that, where it's like, yeah, like there's reasons to fade. We obviously talked through all that stuff on this show and on Rotogrinders, but like, the projections are very, very strong on at least a handful of guys on a lot of these slates. And there's fine plays on this one, but there's nothing, like, I don't think that there's maybe a couple where like anyone clicks them into their lineup and they're like, yeah, like I just love this guy. I can't fade him. Like, I can't fade him like we had with Dearness or whatever. There's not a single one of those guys, including Christian McCaffrey, who is where I feel like we're on like a month run in a row of talking about Christian McCaffrey. But again, at $9,000 on DraftKings, in a very good spot. I think that there's even some, if you really want to get your hand in the dirt, some reasons to be really excited about him if the Dolphins are going to continue to play this super pressure defense that they play, because as you've outlined for multiple weeks in a row, this guy is, basically one of the best route runners, but he's out of the backfield. and you're going to single cover him, with some linebackers and safeties and stuff. And it could get really dangerous for him. And what's crazy to me is I am very curious about this ownership. We don't have him, as like the stone cold chalk, right? Because of some of this nuance of the slate, there's not a lot of like super cheap plays to plug in. And so how are you treating, I do want to start with him, because we have Miles Sanders, James Robinson, and Darrell Henderson, all kind of a little bit higher owned than Christian McCaffrey. But he, to me, is like the clear standout spend up play.
Yeah, and you guys at Rotogrinders also have Jonathan Taylor. What am I looking at? I'm looking at Yahoo. Is Taylor projecting for a lot of ownership as well? I mean, I think both McCaffrey and Taylor, they're right there in the same price point. I don't really want to play Taylor against the Bucs. I was thinking he might be a little bit more unique as a play. And yeah, he's projecting a lot lower in over on DraftKings. But yeah, I mean, I don't really necessarily want to play him against the Bucs either. But at the same time, like, he was going to be an example of a guy where you can get certainly a little bit of contrarian value. Doesn't look like he's going to be super popular, very expensive in a high total game, and a guy who's playing just incredible football. I mean, part of me on these types of slates is like, there's plays like Taylor who are playing amazing lately. You could go with whatever advanced stats you want. He's incredible. And yet, because his price has risen, he's not really going to be highly played. I think that applies to some extent to guys like Cooper Kupp. And so these are dudes that, like, for me, I want to be considering on a week like this where we know there's a real ceiling, and they might wind up being, once again, like we've seen in prior weeks, some of the, the top ceiling plays, like sort of you had to have them and build around that. Getting away from some of the absolute best raw ceiling plays to chase, a slightly better version of the same crappy play in the mid tiers is, it can lean you the wrong way, obviously, when you're talking about ownership being low on those guys as well. I mean, you don't necessarily want to chase up, to suboptimal spots and really high price tags on guys, especially if they're high owned. So you asked about McCaffrey. He's looking like he's going to come in a little bit higher than that. That game has a really low total. Yeah. At the same time, like, there's explosive players in that game. I could see that game actually being one that gets a little bit interesting. I don't really know what to do with the totals because even like I've always been someone who defaults to them, but we've seen a lot of games go way under, you know what I mean? Like this year. And so last week we saw it with what was the big one? Dallas and the Rams.
Dallas and was that Dallas, Kansas City? Yeah, because Dallas didn't score,
yes.
right?
Dallas, Kansas City, right? Dallas, Kansas City. They went way under, right? And so I mean, anyway, the point is, like, I'm not going to be completely off Carolina, Miami, just because it is I think it's the lowest total on the slate, right? It's not great, obviously, but you do have playmakers, guys like Waddle, Gesicki that can get, Waddle hasn't been getting vertical. Gesicki can. Miami can score or can at least hit on some big plays. Carolina, I think, obviously, with McCaffrey and then DJ Moore, that they're guys that can do stuff after the catch. It's going to be probably a slow game, but you could have some long TDs that suddenly make this actually one of the more interesting games for DFS. So, I mean, yeah, McCaffrey's a guy I think to have in your player pool. I'm not actually playing him right now, this is sort of the first week because he is starting to get a little more popular. His price has risen. I mean, what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is like he's been $1,000 cheaper and coming in at half the ownership, and so it's been a lot easier to be like, why wouldn't you play Christian McCaffrey at 8K, 10%? Now it's 9K and it's pushing 20%.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think the running back thing is really fascinating. You hit on my favorite point, which is why I I really like McCaffrey, and I really like some of these spend ups. Cooper Kupp. It's a little difficult on DraftKings, but the Cooper Kupps, the Devontae Adams, the Justin Jeffersons, Dalvin Cooks, right? Deebo Samuels, all these expensive guys, because of what you said, the field is gravitating at the running back position specifically to these guys who are, what is really the difference between, we'll get to my guys in my favorite game, but what is the difference between Miles Sanders and Ty Johnson? What is the difference between, and I like just fine, Miles Sanders, James Robinson, and I really like Darrell Henderson too. What is the difference, like truly the difference? Maybe Darrell Henderson, just because of the Rams' offensive upside, scoring upside, but like all these guys, Saquon, I know the names on these guys. are nice. And like, they've been really good in the past and all of that. But like, what is really the difference between them and some of these cheaper options, not even just at running back, but you can do the kind of this barbell thing like you talked about. No one is playing Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams in the one game everyone's actually excited for. No one, we'll get to tight end too. No one is playing Kyle Pitts on DraftKings. Kyle Pitts is playing the Jags are actually this kind of crazy pass funnel. Like nobody really runs on him. Jonathan Taylor had like 100 yards in the first half and like 0 in the second half. He runs on everybody. And no one's going to play Kyle Pitts without Calvin Ridley, right? No one's going to play Justin Jefferson again, after he just, you talked about it. Eventually he's going to have that 35-point game, and shocker, last week it happened. It's a good matchup for Justin Jefferson. So no one is playing those guys because like, who wants to click David Johnson? Who wants to click, right? Who wants to click these cheap, crappy guys, which I understand that thing. But when you start to really compare from a median projection standpoint, maybe a little bit from a ceiling, I'm not sold that Miles Sanders has any sort of significant edge over like any of these other guys. And he's probably at least as fragile, if not more so. So I think the running back position is that interesting spot where, because of the names, because of the comfortability of clicking Miles Sanders and James Robinson at 5 and 6K over Ty Johnson and Christian McCaffrey or David Johnson and Cooper Kupp, right? That doesn't feel good in your lineup, and it probably doesn't project quite as well either. But I kind of feel like that type of thing. And that's another reason why I like these gross games. It's like, dude, you can stack up. I know it feels uncomfortable, but if you talked about the totals, why can Jets Texans not score as many points as pick a game maybe outside of the Packers Rams and I guess Bucs Colts, but like, I can stack up this game with all these super cheap pieces. I fit Cooper Kupp. I fit, somebody mentioned Chris Godwin. I can fit Chris Godwin, or you like Mike Evans, right? You want Christian McCaffrey. You want Jonathan Taylor. You can fit all of those guys with a game that's really not projected to be any lower scoring. It's just the names are really gross and really bad.
I will say, I think part of the reason I was kind of hemming and hawing about McCaffrey, I do think because of, like, I don't think Ty Johnson is that off the wall. And I do think like because of that cheap value that we're going to see some, like McCaffrey, Ty John is going to be a really popular 2 running back build.
Yep.
And so I completely agree with everything you said on Miles Sanders and James Robinson, but I'm kind of also going off the board with McCaffrey Johnson type builds as well, and trying to find other, stuff that's completely different, which not necessarily finding a ton of success doing. And I am playing Ty Johnson. I should be clear, but I mean, like some Ty Johnson FUD, like he's been in sort of a 1/3 of the snaps role most of the year. It was 3 backs. Then Michael Carter emerged to sort of a 2/3 to 1/3 role with Coleman out of the picture. Coleman has come back recently, not done a ton. Carter played about 1/3 of the snaps before he got hurt. And so it was really interesting to see for the rest of that game what was going to happen. And what ended up happening is Tevin Coleman got right there with Ty Johnson. They all played exactly 20 snaps. They all played exactly 33% of the snaps, which to me, what I wrote about in Signals was like Coleman kind of took that early down stuff that Carter was doing, at least in that game last week. And him and Ty Johnson were sort of in the same split that Carter and Ty Johnson were in. Ty Johnson winds up at 33% again. He doesn't get any kind of a boost. I think he could still get a huge boost. He is the pass catching back, but now we do have the quarterback switch to Zach Wilson. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of ways Ty Johnson can fail. At the same time, 4.3K on DraftKings, he is going to run more routes than Coleman. And I do think that what we saw last week is not set in stone. There are, possibilities that he plays 60%, 70% of the snaps, as opposed to like what I'm expecting, which is maybe more like 50-50. And even if it is 50-50, again, Coleman's probably going to get more of the low value touches, talk about the high value touches, the receptions, the goal line work. To circle back to like Miles Sanders, a good example of why I wouldn't be playing him, not going to get any high value touches. Looks like a complete, what I always call the trap back, which stands for trivial rush attempt percentages. This stat I came up with a couple of years ago. These trivial rush attempts, these low value touches, that's a really high percentage of the touches he's getting. He looks like he's going to get a ton of touches, but he's not going to get a lot of completions or receptions because Jalen Hurts isn't going to throw a lot of passes at all, period. This is a very run heavy team, but especially not underneath. When they do throw, they're pushing it vertically. He's also not getting as many green zone touches as most lead backs because first of all, they rotate a little bit, but second of all, more importantly, Jalen Hurts takes those, right? 3 touchdowns last week rushing, has multiple TD games. And so you have this back that doesn't really have the same touchdown equity, doesn't have the reception equity, is going to get 15, 20 touches, but they're all going to be carries, between the 20s carries, right? He's projecting as the highest owned running back on this slate. That is not something I want to be chasing.
Yeah. And that's why I do like this conversation around, again, not to focus solely in on this Jets Texans thing, but both sides are fascinating at running back. And because of the existence of Miles Sanders, because of the existence of James Robinson, yes, Ty Johnson is definitely going to get his fair share of ownership, but there's also 3 other backs in that game, I think, that you can play. Now, depending upon your contest and, risk tolerance, all the typical caveats, but you outlined it and somebody mentioned in chat, this is exactly what I was going to say. So last week is not set in stone for Ty Johnson. And yes, he is going to get more of the high value touches. He's going to run more routes, get more passing game work, which obviously we much prefer. But who is to say Tevin Coleman doesn't take on a little bit of that and get the early down work and get the goal line work, right? So maybe Ty Johnson out targets him, but Tevin gets his share of passing down work. And maybe he's kind of like maybe Ty Johnson does just stay in that 33% role and Tevin becomes closer to a workhorse. And no one's playing Tevin Coleman. I mean, no, and I'm not saying I want to either, but no one is playing Tevin Coleman. On the flip side, right? Philip Lindsay is gone. It basically, now this is also not set in stone. It's the Texans. We could come out and Royce Freeman is the third back on this team. He could end up being the lead. I have no idea what's going to happen with the Texans. However, no one does. And no one wants to click David Johnson. And certainly no one wants to click Rex Burkhead. I know Rex Burkhead wasn't the passing down back, didn't get targets, whatever, but there was basically a 50-50 split last week. He out carried David Johnson, got goal line work, and Rex Burkhead is not incapable in the passing game, right? David Johnson's probably a little bit better, but Rex Burkhead's been a very good passing down back in his career. So I'm saying the point is I don't know, but no one knows. And because no one knows, people are absolutely afraid to click Tevin, and people are afraid to click the Texans backs. And to your point, they have paths I'm not sure Miles Sanders has a path to being this super smash role, but all of these guys do. I have no idea who it's going to be. Everybody kind of has to develop their own take on that. But that's why I really like this situation, because I feel fairly confident that on each side, we're going to get something good from one of these guys. Who is it? I don't have the slightest idea, but I feel fairly confident that I'm going to get something usable. It's possible you could get something usable out of all 4 guys. Will you get a ceiling? Probably not in that circumstance, but it's legitimately possible, right? That you get something usable. So I really like that situation. And it's a way to get away from, those mid-tier guys that everybody's latching onto because they feel a little bit more comfortable. I also want to say, somebody mentioned in the chat, like, so-and-so's a bust with Zach Wilson at quarterback. And I mean, yeah, I guess that's certainly possible, but even despite some poor play early in the year, some of these running backs were okay. And now one of them's out of the picture. And Zach Wilson is not worse than Mike White and Joe Flacco. I know that people may, I guess, believe that, but certainly not against the Texans. I think I would be worrying about that.
I think the concern, certainly part of when you look at running back receptions, part of the thing that I've seen over the years is that quarterback does dictate a lot of it. That's been the narrative on Mike White. I think it's been very true for Mike White. He's more willing. I mean, there's just certain quarterbacks that are more willing, more able to get through their reads and get down to their check down. Yeah. Phillip Rivers was that guy out through his whole career. He would make that read basically pre-snap and swing a pass out to the running back immediately, knowing, he saw from the pre-snap motion there in a zone, and that's where I'm going to want to deliver this ball. Yeah. He doesn't even let the routes. Brady does. They don't even let the routes develop downfield sometimes. That's not what Zach Wilson has been. At the same time, I completely agree with you. The dude's been out for several weeks. He's watched their offense function differently. We don't know what they're coaching him on right now. They might be literally, and I would think, honestly, probably literally coaching him on this exact thing, saying, look, you got to be more willing to get to the check down. This is what you were doing wrong, forcing balls downfield way too frequently, throwing interceptions down the field. We do want you to be aggressive, but this is a game actually where we want you to show us that you have the ability to take these short completions. Now, I mean, it's tough to bet against, especially in a DFS window, to bet against the trends that we've already seen and expect something to change. You can get into a lot of trouble that way. I do think it's possible, though. To your point, like, I think it's possible we see Zach Wilson throw more passes to the running backs today than he has basically in any game all year. It's just, yeah, I mean, it isn't a great fit. Certainly that Wilson has been more vertical as a passer than these other QBs.
Definitely. So before we get into kind of like wide receiver quarterback stacks and all that kind of stuff, it was a very good question. The Yahoo GPPs and everything. These people are crazy over there at Yahoo. They're running, tons of, every week is, kind of maybe a little bit different, like rake free or like, guaranteed overlay, right? Guaranteed win, right? I think my favorite was a few weeks ago. They're going to run like a guaranteed win, like you literally can't lose if you enter this tournament. And Squirrel Patrol, who also works at John Breslin, who works at Rotogrinders, like tweeted out, it was like Saturday, and they're like, Yahoo is running a guaranteed win. Like you put your money in and you cannot lose in this tournament, and it's not going to fill. Like, because people are just not super used to Yahoo. So somebody asked about Yahoo in the chat, and I think it's very interesting today, at least when I start to look at our projections. Before we get into that, if you are going to go play on Yahoo, they have, like I said, tons of like really, really awesome tournaments. I highly recommend it. If you use promo code Grinders25, you'll get a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. There's I think Devin's also going to drop this link in there. There's a 50K free roll contest on Yahoo right now. So just tons of good stuff. You can also use Yahoo NFL Lineup HQ right now for free. We don't have the projected ownership. We'll touch on some of that. We don't have the projected ownership up for the free users, but you'll get the projections and everything else, all the goodness, 100% for free in Lineup HQ. So on Yahoo, it's very interesting because you mentioned you had it pulled up, right? Jonathan Taylor, because of just a slight pricing gap or whatever, is actually the highest projected owned running back on Yahoo. And look, I get it. I'm not sure that anything matters for Jonathan Taylor, matchup, whatever. However, when we get an expensive player on Yahoo that's non-PPR, which is better for him, but he needs those touchdowns at a really high price in what I think we would all agree is the worst matchup for a running back, particularly one that's not like, a super high volume receiver. He's a good receiver, but he's not a super high volume receiver. And he's going to be the chalkiest play on the slate. It's like, that was the first thing too that jumped out to me is like, dude, I can get Christian McCaffrey. I can get some of these crappy running backs that we talked about. I can get over here, Dalvin Cook, right? Darrell Henderson is actually a little bit more priced up on Yahoo, but much lower owned. And that one's the crazy one to me. I do want to touch on him before we move on. A few weeks ago, right? He was at this price and he was like, what was he owned in tournaments? Like 75% or something like that. And now he's not mega chalk at 5,800 on DraftKings and $22 on Yahoo. What has changed? So he's another guy that really jumps out to me. I don't know about you.
He's a great play. I completely agree. Yeah, I mean that Rams Green Bay game looks really good. And there are, like you said, the guys that you would project to be the ones, producing the most points. I mean, certainly him. You mentioned Adams and Kupp. They're not really going to be played, but I also think, it doesn't look like Odell Beckham's going to be widely played. And I also think he's like, I'll just say it now, like he was going to be my conviction play, just a really gross conviction play. Yes. But like, look, nobody wants to play him. He was horrible with the Rams, but they immediately tried to get him the ball on the first drive. And then look, they threw that pick. They basically were like, look, you've only been at 4 days of practice. We're going to kind of pull you for the rest of this game, but they just came off a bye, right? We haven't seen him play again, but they got 2 weeks to get up to speed a little bit. They had 4 days before the last game. Rams very concentrated in everything they do offensively, or they tend to be. He's also not really competing with a lot of like Van Jefferson is not a great target earner. Tyler Higbee, not a great target earner. You're competing with Kupp, but there is room for Beckham to be a stud. This offense tends to be concentrated towards their studs. They run a lot of routes. They have like the same 5 skill position guys on the field almost every snap. And so if they're ready to like get him going, and they've been talking like they are, they've had 2 weeks to kind of get on the same page. I think there's some possibility that he runs routes on 80-90% of dropbacks. And if he's doing that at his price in a concentrated offense in a good game environment, he's a good play.
Yeah, he is super interesting. It's also funny if you look at, we're talking about Yahoo, he's not at the min. And so he doesn't project absolutely incredibly, but that's a lot. It's because of a lot of this uncertainty. But if you took a step back, also what Ben, I don't know how you say his name, Skorenek, he's out, which I can't believe I'm even mentioning that as something to care about. But he did, yeah, exactly. But he was the other guy that could take some of those snaps, right? And Johnny Munt is also out, I believe, right? So they're not really playing 2 tight ends very much. Odell, like you said, Odell could come out here and play like 95% of snaps. I don't know if that's going to happen, but like they don't have a lot of other options, and they're going to have to score today for sure. This is not a game where they're just going to kind of be able to. I know Stafford. There's news about Stafford being dinged up. They're going to have to put up points today. And so like, especially like I said on Yahoo, I mean, Odell predicts to be 0.1%. Like in this free roll or whatever, like maybe the only people, like there'll be a couple people outside of this, but like the people listening to this might be the only people that play Odell Beckham, right? Because there are some other, you know, kind of mispriced players. But he's in the best game of them all, right? I like some of these other guys fine too, but now you have the guy in the one game that we actually love, you know, in terms of both offenses are good, blah, blah, blah. And what if Robert, let me put it this way. If Robert Woods were $15 on DraftKings pre-injury, Odell is not Robert Woods. He's not going to play that exact same role. But if, you know, it's close enough. If Robert Woods were this price in this game on this slate on Yahoo, he would absolutely be the chalk. He would absolutely be the chalk. And 5K on DraftKings, same thing. Yep. He would be so chalky. But because we kind of don't know yet, right? And he's not Robert Woods, I get it. But like Odell Beckham can still play. I believe that. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, but that's what I believe. And so he's an awesome, like he's leverage off of, you know, different players. He's leverage off of that price point, which we'll get into. I agree. I really like.
And to your point about him, he can still play. I mean, that the video of him, you know, the Odell Beckham's always open video, so infamous now, right? But there is something to be said when you look at the numbers. His targets per out run, that's the number that I think is so important. You know, we think of ceiling at wide receiver with these big, long, you know, touchdowns. Really, it's can he earn 10 targets? Like, can a guy consistently win on his routes and earn a ton of volume? Targets aren't just handed out, they're earned. I mean, I think that's something that people are still missing. And I still hear like, oh, they didn't give this guy enough targets. The dude didn't get open. I mean, like we keep hearing about, they're not giving Kenny Golladay enough targets. Kenny Golladay has always been sort of a contested catch guy that Matthew Stafford was good for, would put the ball up to, but he's not a separator. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So maybe they're going to put some balls up to him a little bit more and create some opportunities for him. But for the most part, when guys are good separators, they get open constantly, they're going to earn volume. And that's huge in fantasy, obviously. Beckham is a guy, even as he was not producing for Cleveland, was earning volume, right? And there's always talk about Baker felt obligated to throw to him or whatever. The bottom line is like this dude's consistently, even when he wasn't doing well with Cleveland, ever since he left the Giants, has continued to earn targets per route. It's mostly just been his efficiency has really dropped off and why he hasn't been as good as he was back in his early days. But the volume has consistently been up there. Like I said, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, the other guys that are going to be in routes for the Rams are not actually very strong in terms of earning routes, or they haven't been in small samples. So you don't have a massive competition other than Cooper Kupp. So yeah, to your point that he still can play, like that's what the data says too. It's one of the big reasons I'm actually interested in him is that the targets per route are strong relative to his, to his competition for that number 2 spot behind Kupp. And so if he can, I do think, especially long-term, and as we approach the playoffs, he's gonna be the number 2 guy there pretty consistently. Yep. So I want to be a week ahead.
Yeah, and that's the theme, right? We talk about that every week, and that's why I mentioned like the Jets, why I mentioned the Texans, why we're talking about Odell, some other guys that we're definitely going to talk about. I want to be out ahead of this. Though every time you wait, right? Other than Cooper Kupp, who scores 40 fantasy points every week, like if you wait, not only does the field start to catch on the next week, but their price rises. So now you're getting the guy after the breakout at higher ownership at a higher cost, right? It doesn't matter if you're wrong. That's the thing that people like, look, we're going to be wrong about things that I'm going to talk about that I like, I'm freaking talking about Jets, Texans, right? I'm also going to talk about like Falcons, Jaguars. We're going to talk about some bad games. I'm going to be wrong about things, but the payoff is what you're really looking for. We just said he's 0.1% on a site. I'm not saying go all in on this guy or play him, even if you're only playing one team, maybe you don't feel comfortable doing that. But like having a little bit of a guy like that where the payoff is so big, but the risk is nothing. The risk is you miss and you're going to miss on something else. So
and if you don't want to play him, from the jump, he's late game. So you can swap to him as well. Right?
Yeah.
They're in the
yes.
late window.
Yes.
Okay,
late game. So same. So I had to think about it too, because I can't remember who is playing at what time on this one. So you mentioned being out ahead of something, and we're actually probably a little bit late to this guy because I'm going to transition into kind of wide receiver stacks and stuff like that. Again, I promise I will stop talking about this game, but one of my loves of the offseason, loves of this rookie draft class, loves of best ball season, and now is really starting to break out. who is actually not going to be that popular because he got a pretty hefty price bump, but I think it's more than warranted, is Elijah Moore.
More than warranted. Yeah. Nice pun there.
Yeah, exactly. See that? I was wondering if you were going to get that one. I try to we talked about this earlier this week on a different show. I try to just keep talking and not let you get into, too many good witty jokes or anything like that, or comebacks. So I did want to have your take kind of on the Jets passing, so Corey Davis is out. I should preface this by saying, right, obviously Zach Wilson's back. You talked a little bit about kind of the uncertainty around that type of thing. But if anything, I would imagine Zach Wilson's kind of gunslinger mentality for a player like Elijah Moore without Corey Davis against the Texans is something I'm very excited about. You have potential. We already talked about the backfield. We haven't talked about, but he's a fairly popular play, but a potential, secondary correlation or a bring back if you want to play a stack of this game. Brandon Cooks on the other side. And I feel like it's just a situation where Elijah Moore last week earned huge targets, 11 targets on 39 pass attempts. That was with Corey Davis in the game. I know Joe Flacco was playing, but we have a guy who he got a price bump. And so it feels like there's a little sticker shock kind of around Elijah Moore, but he's another guy like on Yahoo I really love because of his price. And I feel the same way about him on even on DraftKings and Fanduel, where this dude could be like this breakout superstar, right? We talk about young guys at, peaking as the season is going on. The matchup is pristine, and people really aren't that on him. He's not going to be 2%, but people really aren't that excited about Elijah Moore given the context of the slate. So how do you feel about kind of Elijah Moore, that game, the receivers, particularly with Wilson at quarterback?
I mean, we do this every year with the rookies. People don't learn that the rookies sometimes take some time for the role to develop. It is every year around week 10, week 11. I've been talking about it and stealing signals for the last month. This is about the point where you're going to start to see one or a couple of these guys break out into really full-time roles. Teams like to give them the sort of the first half of their rookie season to be sort of in part-time roles. And they got to show it. They got to produce, but Moore started to produce. Once you're a little bit efficient, then the opportunity follows. He played 80% of the snaps last week. Highest snap share he's played since week 1. The play has been there, right? 4 touchdowns last 3 games. Had the rushing TD 5 weeks ago. So really 5 touchdowns in his last 5 games. 6 targets in every one of those games. It is everything as advertised from the offseason. This dude can earn volume. He's explosive. This is what AJ Brown's rookie season looked like, right? It took a while. I mean, he had some bigger games earlier, but part-time role, then grew into a big role right around week 9, week 10. That's what DJ Moore's rookie season looked like. It's what Juju Smith-Schuster's rookie season looked like. And then these guys smash late in the year. I mean, this is what happens every year. I'm not saying for sure that it's going to be Elijah Moore, but people need to see it first. It's a great, like we were just saying, you want to be early on some trends. This is the trend to be early on right now, is the rookies growing their role growing around week 10, week 11. The season is running out for the Jets. They know they're not going anywhere. They have a couple of months now to see what they have in Moore, and he's playing well. They're going to give him a leash. All the trends over the last several years, any other similar rookie, similar draft capital, similar profile, who's produced similarly up to this point in the season, goes from this point on as basically a full-time player. And that's what you're probably going to see. And he hasn't been one. So to your point, I mean, his targets per run, all those types of things, they look good. Now his routes are going to be there, right? And so, and he's making these plays, making explosive plays. Is he a lock to be like awesome with Zach Wilson with the quarterback change? No. Very sharp play though. Completely agree. I have him in my main lineup.
Oh boy, we're both going to this. This is dangerous when we start to get on these same guys in our main team. That's when it starts to get dangerous. But I think there's a lot of comments in chat, and this is actually making me a little bit more excited, which is, I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign, but everyone keeps saying like the Jets are bad, Wilson is bad, blah, blah, blah. And like, I get it. Like, trust me, I get it. But like the Texans defense is horrid. Like, I don't really understand that why the he's bad only ever applies to the guy that you're clicking on to put into your like, dude, I play bad players in DFS constantly. Like literally people are clicking Leonard Fournette all the time. Leonard Fournette's actually like one of the like top 10 owned running backs on the slate. Leonard Fournette absolutely stinks at football. He's horrible. Like but his role is incredibly valuable, right? And if you're Elijah Moore getting double-digit targets against the Texans, I know Zach Wilson is not good, but people are making Zach Wilson out to be like he's, I don't know, Tim Boyle. Like, come on, he's not this bad. And so if everyone is so dramatic about these things, right? Like we take it too far. Some people might, be too far. Like, oh, I'm really excited for Zach Wilson, which might've been actually a lot of people before the season started because he looked good in the preseason and blah, blah, blah. But now we've come too far the other way. Like he's not worse than Joe Flacco. I mean, come on. And this offense was capable enough with Joe Flacco at the helm. And now we've removed a heavy target drawer in Corey Davis, and we've removed their lead running back. It's like they're not gonna have 100 total yards and score 0 points. It's just not gonna happen. And they're all affordably priced with tons of opportunity. And the same thing is on the Texans side, right? Brandon Cooks is gonna draw actually quite a bit of ownership, so that definitely worries me. But he makes obviously a clear bring back in this game. And I think people were talking about, optimizers are spitting out with projections Cam as a cash game quarterback. I actually prefer Tyrod as a cash game quarterback. He's running as much or more than he's ever run in his career. At maybe it's out of necessity given the situation, but the Jets defense is like the one defense that might be worse than the Texans. Everybody scores. Like the Dolphins have like no weapons. And Tua threw for like almost 300 yards. Mac Hollins caught like a 70-yard touchdown. The Jets defense is absolutely horrible. And so I think both of these quarterbacks in this game are in play. I think I mentioned like you can stack this game. I'm not saying that you have to, but I think when everyone's going to Cam, who I also like, of course, Cam projects well. I think he looks good. He's running. But you mentioned like the total that game could also be very, very gross. And so if everyone is going to kind of, because of Cam's name and a little bit potential more running is going to gravitate to him, I do kind of like these quarterbacks that everybody is much more scared to click on Zach Wilson and Tyrod because like the name value and the kind of comfortability. Like it's the same thing at running back, right? You feel comfortable clicking Miles Sanders because of his name and his projection, but like these grosser guys, and there's other ones too, not just these ones in this game, but there's like people don't want to click Zach Wilson because they all think he stinks, but we'll click Miles Sanders or James Robinson or Leonard Fournette or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, reading these comments, like everyone is very, very convinced that Zach Wilson could never be an NFL quarterback. I mean, we've seen so much, right? We've seen 6 games. You guys got it all figured out. I mean, literally, like I'm going to kind of want to rip our comment section a new one right now. Like what, the NFL this well, like I've been doing this for 20 years. I promise you, the only thing that I bank on in the NFL is that everything changes constantly, pure chaos. That's what we talk about. The NFL is chaos. Everyone said this about so many dudes. I mean, like if you're watching the Manning cast last week, they're getting in all these jokes about Peyton Manning's, league leading 26 interceptions his rookie year or whatever. Like you dudes would have written off Peyton Manning by this point in his rookie season, guaranteed. I'm not saying Zach Wilson's Peyton Manning, but you don't know that. I promise you are way too confident in this take. You need to be willing to be wrong, basically. I think the same thing, but I'm willing to be wrong. That I think Zach Wilson sucks, but if the opportunity presents itself where absolutely no one is going to play something that has some potential upside that isn't there, I'm willing to be wrong. Is the way that I would put it.
Yeah, and so Josh says, like, are you guys secretly related to Zach Wilson? No, I don't even like Zach Wilson. I'm not a Jets fan. I do think he stinks, but sometimes these present themselves, right? These situations where everyone is 100% certain they know either how a situation is going to play out, the overall ability of that player. And so like, I just don't get how everyone can always be so certain. And for me, those are the situations. It's the shining example of those are the situations, whether he is bad or not, I want to pounce on because everyone else is so certain they know exactly, what the answer is. And it's probably a coin flip. In reality, it's probably 50-50, but everyone else thinks it's 98-2. And so I just want to take the opposite side in those situations. It doesn't have to be Zach Wilson. It could be anybody. We'll talk. I want to move to another game. I know we're running.
We've definitely talked about Zach Wilson way too long, and he's probably going to blow today. Like, let's be honest.
Of course, he's probably going to suck. I actually like Tyrod better than Zach Wilson. In that same game, they're like $100 apart. So we belabored that too much. But he is absolutely an example of how you should think about DFS. Remove Zach Wilson's name. I don't give a crap about Zach Wilson. I don't care about the Jets. I don't care about any of that. These are chess pieces to me. That's all that they are, right? But once you identify that, right? We talked about Darrell Henderson. Why in the heck is everybody off Darrell Henderson? Because he's had 2 games under 10 points, and now he's 5,800 on DraftKings. A month ago, he was 5,800, and we were on this show like, do I have to play him? Because he's going to be, he's going to be so chalky.
You're pivoting to some of these different plays. That's literally what we're looking for, is players that the public is too confident in. That's how you play tournaments. You fade ownership. You fade the trends that people are way too confident in. That's how you do well in NFL sports betting. You fade the team trends. Things change constantly. That is the way you win in the NFL. Win money. I promise you. Like, you have to understand that what you saw last week is not guaranteed to be what you saw this week. And look, Zach Wilson's been off for a long period of time. Again, don't think he's going to be great. We could see a different quarterback today. I'm not playing him at all. I'm playing Tyrod Taylor, though. I am playing this game to be a little bit interesting. It would require Wilson to play halfway decent for that to happen, I think.
Yeah. So here's another game that, it's definitely going to be getting ownership. So I do think we have to kind of consider that in this, but you have a fairly clear situation with the Bucs again, right? We've gone through this thing now for months with the Bucs. Is, it's kind of a running joke. Brady throws 4 touchdowns every week, right? But he is in a spot right now against the Colts, pretty porous pass defense and fairly stout run defense, that it sets up really well for Brady. It sets up really well for the passing game. Gronk is back, which I don't know, how you feel about Gronk, but you have obviously Chris Godwin, who's going to be popular. Mike Evans, who I feel like everybody thinks is like the sneaky tournament play, and then he comes in a lot higher owned than you think. We talked about Jonathan Taylor, but then you also have Michael Pittman on the other side. How are you approaching this game? Because it obviously sets up fairly well with like what you would perceive to be kind of like 2 pass funnels, right? And some condensed targets on each side.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be super, super popular. It should be, but it's a little bit challenging, I think, to build it all from a price perspective. I mean, at least like if you were to go like Brady, Godwin, Evans, Jonathan Taylor, I mean, that's a huge chunk of your salary, but I actually think that might be like the chalk intelligent way, whatever you want to say, to play this slate. Like, this is the high total game. This is like, those are the best players in the game. You just throw those guys in a lineup. There's not going to be a lot of lineups that have that. So like all of those pieces without going down to something cheaper, you could do that and then game stack around it with like, some of these other cheap games, right? We talked about the Houston Jets game a lot, the Jacksonville game, whatever, and make some cheap, mini correlations alongside that. I think that would be somewhat unique. I mean, I just haven't heard a ton of people pushing that, but it is, projecting for high ownership. It is the high game. So for the most part, I'm either like over correlating this game or not playing it.
Yep. I think I was going to say, piggyback on that. I think that's exactly how kind of I would approach it. Because of the pricing on everybody, you need a pretty high scoring environment, and you do need it very condensed between all those guys, because you're going to need a lot of raw points. Because when you start to pile up all expensive guys in one same game, you really start to sacrifice ceiling, because it's really hard in an NFL game, right, for multiple 8K players in the same game to pay off. We did see it last week in the Packers-Viking game, but that's what you need, right? You need a game in the 40s with condensed targets on both sides. You need big plays to speed the game up. And so I do like that game from if you're going to like kind of onslaught that game, and then, right, again, find your kind of like cheaper pairings alongside it, right? Whether it's that Texans-Jets game, Jags-Falcons, there are actually some cheap guys in even like the Green Bay game, right? You mentioned Odell. Henderson is not expensive. Nobody's going to go back to MVS. I'm not saying I want to go back to MVS either, but nobody's going to go back to MVS. There are some cheap enough guys to go around it. Another game that's super interesting I wanted to ask you about is people have brought up in the chat is Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Another game where we have, in theory, sometimes it fluctuates, particularly with the Bengals, some fairly condensed targets on both sides, fairly high pass rates, at least the potential to have high pass rates, right? We pretty much know the Bucs will have a high pass rate, but like the Bengals, it kind of depends. But they basically got 4 dudes. And the Steelers, with Juju out, Ebron also out. People have also asked a lot about friermuth, who I really love at tight end. Do you have any interest in this game? Because it seems a little bit gross, but you do get fairly high pass rates and condensed targets on both sides.
Sorry, what was the game? I was
Pittsburgh, Cincinnati.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. We're getting to this one a little bit late. This is a game that I want some exposure to. Certainly, I agree with you with the condensed target trees on both sides. Jamar Chase is, weirdly has not been played really, even when he was hitting. Now he's not hitting and he's high priced, but you're going to get a ceiling at low ownership, which is something that was like part of the reason that I keep talking about Justin Jefferson every week. I don't know. Obviously we've now seen that with Jefferson. We have not seen it for a while with Chase. It seems like the right time to jump back onto the Chase train. People are off T Higgins as well now. Finally had a bad volume game. Has not had any efficiency, but had kept all the volume up, and now it went the wrong way. Instead of the volume continuing to be consistent and the efficiency coming, he loses the volume as well. But at the same time, I think Higgins is still going to have his big moments the rest of the way. It's something we've said kind of all season long, and so eventually at some point you're going to be right. But I do think, like, sitting here now, looking forward, Higgins is going to have some big games at some point in some of these slates. So those are both guys that are really interesting on Pittsburgh side. I mean, I think you could play friermuth at tight end pretty easily. And then you have obviously Deontay and Claypool. So very concentrated, I think, on both sides. I think you can stack this game. You can play either Burrow or Roethlisberger. It's a good one.
Yeah. And the other thing I did want to point out with the quarterback position is normally I really hate these games because it's like, Burrow doesn't really run, right? A little bit, but like Burrow doesn't really run. Big Ben obviously doesn't run. And so like they end up just becoming kind of like secondary correlations and not a game that I want to stack. But this week, I don't care. Look at the quarterback pool. Who are you playing that you're sacrificing? Again, we talked about it, but there's no Lamar, there's no Josh Allen, there's none of those guys. So these games do end up becoming a little more appealing because there's nobody really owned in this game besides Deontay. Deontay will get some ownership, but if anything, we could talk about this too. I don't think Deontay is going to get super steamed. If anything, I think he probably comes in lower than what we have projected, somewhere right around there. But just because that price point is kind of weird, it's like you have like Godwin a little bit more, and then you have the Cooks and all those guys cheaper. And Higgins is such another one of these perfect. Last week T Higgins was the chalk, and he's been the chalk several weeks. Same price. Right, I believe he was this exact same price last week. Stone chalk, like you said, finally has the bad volume game. Who's to say the volume doesn't come back? And now he actually catches the touchdown one of these times, right? Burrow doesn't overthrow him or whatever. It absolutely nothing has changed for T Higgins, but now everybody is off of him. He's just another great example of like, these are the kind of guys that I want to jump on. So I want to talk about. We're not going to get through all these games again. If you, I mention this every week, but if you have questions and we don't get to all the questions, there's a lot to talk about on every single slate. Crunch time will be coming up after us in about 12 minutes or so to polish up the slate, handle any questions that we don't get to, because we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes. I wanted to talk about the Falcons game really, really quickly, not for long, but I just think Kyle Pitts is a fascinating play today. Fanduel will be a little bit more owned, but on Draftkings, right, you have a lot of cheaper tight ends that you can get to that kind of, and the roster construction leads you away from Kyle Pitts. But after a few down weeks, he clearly has the highest ceiling of any tight end on this slate. Nobody can do that. He's had 9 for 150 in one games. Nobody can do that on this slate. And the matchup is absolutely pristine for Kyle Pitts against the Jaguars. I get it. The Falcons also stink. I don't want to trust the Falcons either, but if they were ever going to have a get right game in the passing game, it would be here with Kyle Pitts. And on the opposite side, look, I also don't want to click LaVisca. I also don't want to click Marvin Jones, and J-Rob's getting a little bit of ownership, but like we just removed another, and like, right. They lost Chark a while back. Now they lost Jamal Agnew. It's like targets are going to go somewhere, and they may result in nothing, but there's probably going to be something fantasy relevant here on the Jag side too.
Yeah, if you want some reason to play Visca, I'm not, and I've always been sort of on the Visca truther side. He did kick inside more last week basically for the first time since Chark got hurt. They've been playing him on the outside. Agnew's out now. He's been running a lot of routes on the inside along with Dan Arnold. And they, I believe, have John Brown up now, and he's an outside receiver. And then the other guy is Tavon Austin's playing a little on the inside. They have who's the other receiver that was playing last week outside? I can't even remember, but they like I think there's some possibility that Shenault runs more routes inside this week than he has essentially since like week 3. So that will be helpful for him. That's where Lawrence has been comfortable throwing as well. It's not just where Shenault can win, because like Marvin Jones hasn't been getting any targets on the outside and the efficiency has been really poor out there. It's just where Lawrence has been comfortable his rookie season, going underneath, going over the middle. And so, I mean, I think there's some possibility for Visca. I'm so jaded on him, man. I've lost a lot of money on Visca.
I know, same. I'm also not playing him, so I will say this is the week. I do want to point out, I like I believe it's his catches prop, which is, I want to say it was 3.5, because even if he's inefficient, I think he can very easily cruise to 4 catches without Agnew. None of those other guys are. I know Visca's not necessarily earning a lot of targets either, but none of those other guys are earning targets. You outlined a lot of the reason as to why his role should fit a little bit better with Lawrence. Not to do the wide receiver cornerback thing. AJ Terrell is on the outside, and he is proving to be a pretty good outside corner. Like, if he does take away, part of it, this doesn't mean he's going to have a good fantasy day. But I do kind of like Visca to rack up 4, 5, 6 catches here. It might be for 30 yards, but I do think he can earn some targets. And if you go to BetMGM and use promo code GRINDERSBET, bet $10 on that Visca. The other one I like is Elijah Moore, but I didn't want to continue to talk about Elijah Moore. I wanted to talk about somebody else. Elijah Moore yards are way too low. He's going to crush that. But you bet $10, you'll get $200 on BetMGM if that team scores a touchdown. So that's a pretty fun, kind of similar to the Yahoo thing. Like, they're giving away tons of free money on really like fairly high probability bets. We're gonna wrap up here really quickly. We didn't get to hit on, so I'm just gonna real quick fire off some of these others.
Go for it.
I think the Chargers are very much in play. Like, Herbert double stacks on this slate are very nice. There's Broncos bringbacks. It's a little tricky to pick Broncos bringbacks. And I am a little bit worried about the Broncos. Like, you start to run into a lot of offensive line issues. That's why I'm worried about the Dolphins. When teams have really bad offensive lines, that's one of the things that, no matter how much skill you have on offense, can really, I mean, we saw with the Cowboys. Cowboys couldn't even block the Chiefs, and the Cowboys have an elite offense, and they couldn't even move the ball. So I'm a little worried about the Broncos.
That's a game I took the under on, but I do agree with you. Herbert double stack's definitely in play.
Those are interesting. We talked quite a bit about Rams, Packers. It does look like Aaron Jones, I think, is going to play, which obviously probably takes AJ Dillon out of play, but that could be something like late swap wise to be considering. And then another game in the late window is Vikings Niners, which I think is a game, we unfortunately didn't get a chance to talk a lot about, but there's a lot of appealing options in that game that no one is playing.
Yeah. I mean, if Elijah Mitchell and Aaron Jones both wind up sitting, and those are 2 key ones on this slate, you could have Jeff Wilson and AJ Dillon pretty under-owned in that afternoon window. We talked about a lot of reasons not to like some of the early running backs. So those are interesting guys to consider for pivots. You obviously have some big names on the other sides of those games as well, just for mini correlations. We talked about some Rams, talked about Beckham and Kupp both being underplayed. Minnesota has obviously both Thielen and Jefferson as easy comebacks to a Jeff Wilson play. And so, but I like Kittle. I like Ayuk. I like those guys in the afternoon. I was going to actually close by mentioning the late swap being a huge thing here. These games are big in the afternoon window.
Yeah, and you have, obviously, the Packers game is the one getting a lot more of the attention, but you do have some really appealing options, particularly in that Vikings game. I think that, again, nobody's going to play Justin Jefferson. Nobody's going to play Dalvin Cook. Nobody's going to play Debo. Nobody's going to play Ayuk, right? Kittle, all those, and then the running back thing, so there's a lot of appealing options there in the afternoon. I think that's actually maybe like the most under-owned game. Because it's difficult, similar to how you outlined the Bucs thing. It's hard to fit all those guys in, right? Because they're kind of all expensive. And then they project a little bit worse than teams like the Bucs or whatever, right? So that just no one is playing anybody from that game. And it might be like the second best game on the entire slate. So I do really like that. Before we wrap up, I am going to say Dean's burner account, which is a really funny YouTube name, by the way, says, talk me out of Tyrod in cash, especially on Yahoo. And I am not going to talk you out of Tyrod in cash. I am playing Tyrod Taylor. I told Ben before we started, it is the first week of King of the Beach. If anybody's not familiar, on DraftKings, 250 people qualify. You got to get in the top 75, and I'm playing Tyrod Taylor in that to try to advance to the live final. So you're not going to hear me talk you out of Tyrod. So let's wrap up real quick. You already kind of gave your Odell conviction play, which I really like. And I'm going to kind of take a cheap route out. Elijah Moore is 100% my conviction play of this slate. If I had to do another receiver, it would be Kyle Pitts. But because the chat is so triggered by all of our Zach Wilson discussion, Zach Wilson throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns today against the horrible Texans defense, because chat has already written him off. That's my conviction call.
I love it. Let's get it.
All right. Guys, thank you. Sorry to run a little bit late. If you have any questions that we did not get to, again, crunch time is coming up in about 5 minutes. They will lead you all the way up until lock. And so for me and for Ben, for my dogs, for everybody else in the King of the Beach, everybody in the Yahoo contest, and of course, producer Devin, we will see you guys next week.
Here back in the Fantasy Bar, 6 plays for you on Yahoo for week 12, including 3 plays under $20 to make lineup building easy. Some of my favorite correlation plays as well. And of course, my favorite play of the week on Yahoo. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 12 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Good to be back here once again in the Fantasy Bar talking some Yahoo. Hopefully you guys had a great Thanksgiving and the weekend treating you well. Now, before we get into the plays, couple things. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Get notified when these videos are coming out. Also, if you haven't been in that Yahoo lobby, make sure you go and take advantage. Got a special offer for you. Link in the description of the video. Another baller contest. Yahoo handing out more free money this week. So make sure you guys are taking advantage of that. You just don't see that everywhere. So go give it a shot if you haven't. If you are playing over there, great. Continue to take advantage of that opportunity. Also, if you're going to be betting any games, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs, information, trends, history, ability to compare odds across all the different sports books, and of course, premium picks from some of your favorite Rotogrinders personalities, myself included, handing out NFL picks each and every week. Go get signed up today. Scoresandodds.com/beer. That link right there in the description of the video. All right, let's talk some Yahoo plays here for week 12. Let's start at the running back position with Myles Gaskin of Miami. Now, Gaskin, a guy you've seen a lot in my videos here over the last couple of weeks, whether it's here on Yahoo or the Fanduel Draftkings video. Why? Because he remains too cheap and he's getting workhorse-like numbers here. We're talking 26 touches last week against the New York Jets. Also very involved in the passing game. 4 more targets in every single game this year against one. We've talked about some of the injuries there. No Devontae Parker, no Will Fuller. So they're thin on receivers outside of Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, Myles Gaskin, probably that next option in the passing game. And Carolina on the season been good against running backs. It's been a struggle here over the last couple of weeks. In fact, 11th most fantasy points allowed here over the last 4. So we got a close game here. Myles Gaskin just way too cheap here at just $14. All right, let's go to the tight end position. We're going to spend some money. We're going all the way to the top here with George Kittle of the Niners. So tight end, a tough spot this week. We don't have a lot of the premium tight ends on the slate, kind of ugly overall, but Kittle, certainly a guy I want to pay up for this week. Has been on a roll, touchdowns in 3 straight games. I think he does it once again here against the Minnesota Vikings, but receptions been there as well. We're talking a great reception floor, 4 or more in every single game that he has played this season. San Francisco, healthy 26-point team total here, only trailing the Tampa Bay Bucs on this slate here. So there's plenty of value at other spots. We got more value to come. George Kittle, guy I want to pay up for this week here on Yahoo. All right, let's go back to the running back position. Another guy under $20. That's Miles Sanders, just $17. So first off, injuries. I know it's a crowded Philadelphia backfield these days, but Jordan Howard looking doubtful here this week. So you still have Boston Scott around. It's going to steal some passing game work, but Miles Sanders should get the majority of the carries here in this matchup and looked good last week outside of that fumble. I know a lot of people were worried. Is he going to lose his job because of that? Not with Howard on the
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Crunch Time NFL Edition, Sunday version, and just excited to be jumping on a little weekend slate. A couple good friends of mine. We got first off, Kristi. What's up, Kristi? Long time no see.
I know it's been a long time. So excited to do the show with you. Congrats on the new baby. And so, yeah, exciting
Thank
stuff
you.
going on.
Kristi, do you have any live final appearances in the NFL this year? And if not, how many are you going to win today?
Today, every time I'm on the show with you, I typically win one. So, hey.
I love it. I love that optimism. I love it. All right. Well, we will get your takes. And of course, as we go through the show, also, we have Keith, AKA the Iceman. What's up, Ice? How are you, bud?
Doing well. Happy to be here. Been talking a little hoops with you recently, but excited to get into some NFL. Not a great slate for us here today. Three Thursday games, and we've got a lot of good quarterbacks off this slate. So we got to work with what we're dealt today. But
okay, yeah, pre-show, I was like, all right, well, I haven't done anything. I've signed up for tournaments. I haven't done anything. And he's like, well, you're going to hate it. Like, no. All right, that's fun. But that's okay. Everybody's on the same equal playing field here. So if we all hate our lineups, then somebody's got to profit. And that someone will be us today. Let's talk about this slate here in general. Is there, any teams as far as stacking goes? Let's begin there. And Kristi, you can start. Where are you looking to stack here?
Yeah, I think one of the games that'll be a little bit more popular is that Tampa Bay Indy game. Looks like a great game environment to stack. Also think the Chargers Denver game, Herbert and crew there. I think that makes a great stacking environment. And then just a couple lower owned ones too is that San Francisco Minnesota game. I think is a really good game environment. And then maybe a sneakier stack too is that Cincinnati Pittsburgh game. But I think a lot of chalk we'll see is maybe in that Tampa Bay Indy game to start with.
Okay, great. Keith, any other tournaments you want to talk about, and how do you feel about that chalk in that Tampa Bay game?
Yeah, Tampa Bay is clearly the best stack for me today. I mean, Brady is head and shoulders above all the other quarterbacks, in my opinion, but he's expensive and there's not a ton of great value on this slate. So you've got to do some, like we talked about, some pretty disgusting things. And one of those things I'm doing a lot of is this Jets Texans game, like two really bad teams, but they're so bad. And that's where the value is. So that's going to be an important game today, I think.
Okay, interesting. Before we get into the plays, and we're going to break down every position, talk about our favorite plays. If you are watching on the YouTube, which I think is all of us here, it is a free show on YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget, if you sign up for RG Premium right now, you get $10 off your first month, whether you do combo or individual. And if you do individual, it's already cheap. Then you get $10 off. It's basically like free. It's not quite free, but it's pretty close. So go ahead, sign up, and let's win some money. As far as players go, position-wise, I told you before the show, I'm locking in Danny Dimes at QB. I imagine that is a terrible idea. So Keith, what are we supposed to do? I imagine it's not Danny Dimes.
I mean, I think anything is viable on this slate, but he would not be my first look. I think for FanDuel cash, it's pretty easy. You just play Tom Brady. Salary's looser over there. You can get him pretty easily. On DraftKings, I think you want to save a little bit of money in cash games. I'm looking primarily at Cam Newton, and I think Tyrod Taylor is in play as well. If you want to play Wentz, that's fine as well. But Cam Newton and Tyrod Taylor would be my preferred plays. For tournaments, it's difficult to pay up today, but I really like Stafford. I think the Rams are going to be under-owned for the elite offense that they are. There's rumors floating around about Stafford's health and all that stuff. Cooper Kupp is super expensive. So nobody's going to play Stafford, but I really like going to Ram stacks. Justin Herbert, I think, is also another quarterback with some high upside today. Like getting to a little bit of him. And then I mentioned that Jets Houston game. Zach Wilson is in play along with Tyrod. He's very cheap, just 5-1 on DraftKings, and you've got Corey Davis out, so some of his weapons are cheap as well. So if I'm looking for value stacks, I think Zach Wilson is in play.
Okay, Kristi, quarterback position, what do you like?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Brady at the top, Brady and Justin Herbert are a couple of guys at the top that I think are great plays today. And I think a couple other ones to mention, Kirk Cousins, who will carry next to no ownership. I have a lot of interest in him. I think he has a decent matchup when you kind of look at the numbers. And Justin Jefferson always goes under-owned and like that game environment quite a bit. And And then I also like Joe Burrow. I always have to have at least one lineup with him. His price has come down a little bit. And he's got one of the best receivers at his disposal with Jamar Chase. So like Joe Burrow quite a bit. I think you can throw Garoppolo in there as well on the other side of that Minnesota game. Never a fun play to click on, but pairing him with Kittle and Deebo Samuel, which I think they're going to carry some ownership today. I like that a bit as well. And then agree with, the cheap plays that Keith mentioned too, and Taylor and Newton, especially on DraftKings, some cheaper plays over there too. But I think, one of my favorite tournament plays is probably Cousins today at quarterback.
Okay, let's talk about some of these running backs here. I'm looking at lineup HQ, and we've got guys like Ty Johnson with all kinds of tags, AJ Dillon, all kinds of tags. These are cheap. Are these guys that you're interested in tournaments, or are you trying to get off that chalk? Kristi, you can take it away.
Yeah, so for the some of those guys I'm looking to get off. I think there's a lot of different, great ways to get unique today on the running back position. One of the guys that I like in particular, and I think is pretty good chalk because of the price, is Sanders, especially with Howard being out. Think that makes an okay play. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of guys that pop, Ty Johnson, Hillard, some of those guys at the bottom, even Javonte Williams, that are certainly going to allow you to save some money. And I'm definitely looking to get different here at the running back position.
Okay, well, who are your favorite spend ups there?
Yeah, so for me, I like McCaffrey a ton, and it'll be interesting to see how much where his ownership lies. I think we have him at 14% now, but the upside is there. I think because of Jonathan Taylor doing what he's done the last few weeks, he's right in the conversation too. But Taylor and McCaffrey at the top, I like a ton. Also like Delvin Cook. I mentioned that Vikings game, on Fanduel in particular, he's down to 8,100. Like that play a ton. Joe Mixon too, his price has come up, but he's getting targets out of the backfield. He's getting all the touches. Like that play quite a bit. Cincinnati defense is going to be fairly popular on FanDuel today. So I like pairing, Mixon and the Bengals there. James Robinson, now that he's fully healthy, I think makes a ton of sense. And I really like that play over on DraftKings. He's just 6,200, and I think he's probably the cash game running back to target over there. You can't forget about Austin Eckler too. I mean, he's just been putting up major points week in and week out. So he's a really strong play. And then I think, a guy we need to talk about is AJ Dillon. And I think, he's a guy that is going to be, in my opinion, a core play if Aaron Jones doesn't play. So right now I've got a lineup with Dillon in there, but I'm looking to pivot to Henderson. If for some reason that Jones ends up playing, you can do that pretty easily. DraftKings, it's an even swap, I believe. FanDuel, there's a $400 difference, but there's ways to get it because of all the late game exposure with some of those good games. So I like that Dillon play a lot. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know what we have him for ownership right now, but yeah, I think Henderson makes a fantastic pivot, and no one's really talking about him a ton. Also would throw in, I mentioned Javonte Williams, before last week, he was playing maybe just a little bit more after Gordon had that fumble. If he gets to play a little bit more, he does have big upside, and I certainly like his price. So I think he's someone to consider if you're looking to save some money as well.
All right, Keith, talk me through what you think about running backs here.
Yeah, Kristi made a great point about AJ Dillon. I currently built as if Aaron Jones is out, because I think Dillon does become the best play on the slate if Aaron Jones does get rolled out. Great point about Henderson being right there, $100 cheaper on DraftKings. It's a very easy swap. So I'll just end up with a little bit more Henderson if Jones does get rolled in. But I think that's a great way to handle it. Right. A name I didn't hear get mentioned was Saquon Barkley. Still working his way back from injury. We don't know his role exactly. Only played about 40% of the snaps last week, but we assume he's getting healthier and should be worked in a little bit more this week. If he has even close to his full role, he's underpriced at 6.3 on DraftKings. Some of the cheap guys I'm looking at, Ty Johnson should be the lead back for the Jets there. He's really cheap. Value's hard to find. If you're looking to get off of him, Hilliard is right there in that price range, and David Johnson is another one that I'm looking at for really cheap.
Okay, great. Bring us to the wide receiver position, and Keith, you can lead us off here.
All right, so I'm start off for like cash games. I think Kupp and Adams are a little bit too expensive. Probably not going to get to them on FanDuel. You can get, I think probably Adams would be the top option. On DraftKings, it's really difficult to pay up for either of them. So Chris Godwin would be my preferred top play. Deontay Johnson is an excellent play as well. More mid-range stuff, I think you're looking at Brandon Cooks and Michael Pittman. Both of them make for good cash plays. If you need to save a little bit of money, the Jets without Corey Davis, I think you can look at Elijah Moore or Jamison Crowder. And if you're really looking to go down, Des Fitzpatrick for the Titans, I mean, that'd be like a punt play. For tournaments, I really like Jamar Chase at the top. Like the Bengals against Pittsburgh, not many people are going to go there, but he's definitely in play. Cooper Kupp is probably the best tournament play on the slate for me. It's very, very difficult to get him today. And a lot of people aren't going to try because you have to do things like play David Johnson at running back. But I'm going to play a ton of Kupp. He's been literally the best fantasy player this year. So people don't like seeing that price tag, and he just isn't in that conversation with like a Devontae Adams where he's an elite wide receiver, but he has been that all year.
But he is,
so,
yes.
Yeah. So I'm paying for him today. We'll see how that works out.
Okay.
One more in the mid-range, Mike Williams. Keenan Allen is going to get some popularity, but Mike Williams, haven't seen it from him recently, but earlier in the year, he was showing a massive ceiling. So do like getting to a bit of Mike Williams.
Okay, great. That brings us to tight end, and Kristi, you can kind of lead us off there. I have no idea what to do. I'm playing Evan Ingram because I said I'm playing Danny Dimes, so I have to. But what am I supposed to do with that position?
Yeah, so for tight end, Kittle makes a top play for sure on the slate. We talked about that game environment, and now that he's back, he's probably a little bit too underpriced. So I like Kittle a lot. Kyle Pitts too, in that Atlanta game. I think, if you're spending up, he's definitely a great option. Pat Freiermuth too for Pittsburgh. I think he's an awesome play too for the price, especially with Ebron out again. So if you're looking to save some money, I like him a lot. Both him and Dallas Goedert actually are good ways to save some money there. You could also, look at Dan Arnold and Evan Ingram too as value plays, but I think, for cash, you're probably going to try to get Kittle in there. And if not, maybe get Goddard or Freiermuth in there. Gronkowski, I think, makes a great tournament play. He always goes a little overlooked. I think we have him at 8% ownership right now. But he's back and obviously a favorite target of Brady. So definitely don't overlook him today. And then I also I think I mentioned Dan Arnold, but then you could maybe throw Anthony Ferkser in there just because Tennessee is down so many players, especially on the receiver side. So if you really needed a dart throw, you could throw him in there as well. But I think those are the main guys I'm looking at tight end today.
All right, Keith.
Yeah, on DK, it's a little bit different. Paying up for Kittle is really tough. I think you're going to see Goddard with a lot of ownership, and I think Gronk will be popular on DK. I don't mind punting the position here altogether. I mean, I think you're either punting at running back or at tight end. So on DraftKings, I'm looking at guys like Pharaoh Brown, who's 2.8K, Ryan Griffin at 2.6 in that game, the Jets-Houston game that I like. Tyler Higbee is somebody that's just below Gronk and Goddard, and nobody's going to play him. Evan Ingram also in play with Tony and Shepard out. He should be heavily involved in the offense today. He hasn't been great recently, but should be plenty of opportunity for him today.
Okay. That brings us to defense. Is it just like close your eyes and pick, or is there somewhere we're supposed to go? I saw the Texans defense was dirt cheap and they're playing the Jets. That interested me, but I'll let you guys talk about it, Keith.
Yeah, the Texans are going to be the most popular defense for sure. They're cheap. The Jaguars should be a little bit less owned, and they're right there in that same price range. For tournaments, I don't like paying for the chalky defenses. it is a good way to save some money. I prefer the Jags over the Texans just because of the popularity of the Texans, though. If I could, I'd get up a couple hundred to the Falcons. The Panthers would be the defense I'd be looking to spend up for.
All right, Kristi, defense.
Yeah, I agree. I'd also throw in, I think the Bengals makes a lot of sense on FanDuel. And you could maybe throw the Vikings in there too. But I think to get a little bit different, don't forget about the Patriots. They're priced up there and they're kind of expensive, but they put up major points each week. And so I like them a lot for GPPs this week.
Okay, excellent. We just like tore through that in 15 minutes. That was incredible, which leaves us with about 15 minutes to answer some individual 1v1s, 2v2s, whatever you got. So I am in the YouTube chat. If you are there, start firing away on those questions. And guys, we'll just alternate who's answering the question, regardless of what it is. So we'll start with Ian, who says FanDuel Cash. You like Gauge or MVS? Kristi.
For cash, I'm probably not using either one of those for cash, but like for tournaments, I'd probably say MVS.
Okay. This is a question from Mr. Know-It-All. It's really just a statement, and I wouldn't mind going over this again. It's talking about playing Dylan and Cash. He says you can play Dylan and Cash by playing Aaron Jones, who's only $100 more, and swapping out if he doesn't play. Keith, does that make sense?
It does, but I don't prefer that option. The reason is that because if Aaron Jones is in, he's going to share work with AJ Dillon. You don't know how healthy he is. And I would prefer to build it with Dillon in there first. If Aaron Jones gets ruled in, then you pivot down $100 to Henderson with the Rams.
Okay. It was Henderson. I remember you went through that, but I couldn't recall. Okay, so Henderson would be the pivot there. Thank
Correct.
you.
Yep.
Is Odell Beckham Jr. in play? Kristi, he's in one of mine.
Yep, he is. Exactly. And maybe throw a few more receivers out there too. I think Jamar Chase is one that I wanted to mention. Jefferson and Elijah Moore too today. I we talked about that game environment, but he's a star and he's been getting the targets, and no Davis out today. So I really like him. And yes, I think Odell Beckham is absolutely in play today. It'll be interesting to see how they use him, but they have to score points. Woods isn't there. Cooper Kupp obviously is going to gain, he's going to get his targets, but I think Beckham is a sneaky play today. And he's certainly someone that I have in some of my lineups.
Okay, excellent. Frederick says, hey, Keith, do you like any Texans to pivot off of the Cooks chalk? Is Rex Burkhead too gross?
Yeah, Rex Burkhead, I think he's in play just because him and David Johnson are basically going to split the backfield, I think. It is really gross. I don't love it, but he is in play on this slate. At the wide receiver position, both Amendola and Nico Collins are really cheap. They're in the punt wide receiver range. I think both of them are in play too, but like you said, it's some of the gross stuff that you have to do.
And Tyrod will run for touchdowns, which is really frustrating if you're trying to get those wide receivers in as well. Okay, Rhino says, hey, could Kristi touch on FanDuel Cash running backs? I think I missed it.
Okay, so FanDuel Cash running backs. Sanders, I think, is probably, he makes the most sense over there because of his price. And then I think, you could use Delvin Cook. I think you could, right now I actually have AJ Dillon in there too for my cash game play too. And, again, we'll move to Henderson if need be. So I think those guys are fine. And then Christian McCaffrey, I think he makes a fine play over there too.
Okay, great. Kimberly with just a statement here, Keith. Single entry DK, Burrow, Chase, stack.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Okay. We'll stick with you, Keith, on this one. Do you like Jonnu Smith?
Not somebody I really considered. He was questionable all week. I like some of the plays underneath him. Let me see what his price is here on DraftKings. I'm assuming where that is. Yeah, he's at 2.7. I mentioned Pharaoh Brown and Ryan Griffin would be the two punt tight ends I'm looking at.
Excellent. All right. Old Dog says, in a GPP, you like Adams or Cooper Kupp? I know, Keith, you said that you were very heavy on Cooper Kupp. You're just hoping he is what he has been so far this year. Kristi, how about you, Adams or Kupp?
I like Adams today just because I think he's going to go a little bit overlooked today. So I think I prefer him straight up.
Okay. Also cheaper, which is nice.
Mhm.
Tay says T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd today. Ice, who do you like?
I prefer Higgins there. He's seen a better role. I think he has a more of a red zone role as well. So he's somebody I've played a ton this year and it hasn't worked out. But yeah, I've got a little bit of T. Higgins today.
Okay, we got the nod from Kristi on that one as well. So we're in agreement here. Mike says FanDuel Cash. Kristi, what are your thoughts on Gaskin and Jacoby Myers?
Yep. I realized I didn't mention Gaskin, but yeah, Gaskin I think is a great play. And Myers too. I found him fit a couple of builds. So yeah, both are fine cash plays.
Okay. Big says who would be the pivot off Dillon on FanDuel if Jones is ruled in? It was Henderson on DK, but does that work on FanDuel as well?
It actually does. There's a $400 price difference, but you can get different on your receivers in there. If you needed to, for instance, you could pivot from Keenan Allen to Mike Williams. There's a $400 difference there too. So there's some options there.
You've done this before. You've worked this out already. I like that. All right, let's see. Hater says this is it's a 4v4. You're basically asking the whole damn team here, but all right, Keith, I'm giving this one to you. CMC, Evans, Hilton, Kittle, or CMC, Godwin, Pittman, friermuth.
If that's for a tournament, I would go the first one. The second one has a lot of chalk in there.
Okay.
I was going to say the same exact thing. Yep. The second one sounds like chalk. But yep.
Excellent answer. Okay. Mr. Amazing, DK Cash, Odell Beckham and Dan Arnold, or Elijah Moore and Ozema.
I think in these say tournaments or just
it was just DK Cash, Beckham and Dan Arnold, or Elijah Moore and Ozema.
I'd say Beckham and Arnold.
Isn't Dan Arnold an actor?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Mala says Pittman or Elijah Moore over on DK. Keith?
Yeah, that's a tough call and one that I battled with myself. I ultimately landed on Pittman. Just like the quarterback talent a little bit more. Concerned with Wilson and what we've seen. But yeah, that's a coin flip in my opinion.
Okay, I'll actually a lot of people asking that question, so I'll get that answer from you as well, Kristi. Pittman or Elijah Moore? Keith, you said coin flip, but you lean Pittman. Kristi?
I'm actually probably leaning a little more towards Moore today. I just really like him, but I like them both, and I certainly have exposure to both in my lineups, but I think I prefer Moore a little bit more. Okay,
Dean's burner account says Roth, I need permission to play Tyrod. Without your permission, I just can't. Play him. He's better than what the Texans have been. He can run for 2 scores, and even if he has a crappy game, he can bail you out that way. Yeah, play him. Play him naked. Give me naked Tyrod.
Nailed it.
Play Tyrod. All right, let's see. Friermuth or Goddard? Keith, I think you mentioned both of them as some of your cheaper tight ends.
Yeah, they're both definitely in play. For cash games, I would definitely prefer to play Goddard if you have the 400 to get there.
All right, great. FanDuel Cash, Kristi, Debo or Jefferson?
For cash, I'd probably go Debo and probably Jefferson for tournaments.
Excellent. Kit says FanDuel GPP last piece, LaVisca Chenault, or I believe that's Robbie Anderson. Chenault, like I always want him to do amazing things, but he never does it. Like I know he's capable, but
he's talented.
It's really so talented. Frustrating.
It is.
So anyways, Keith, Chenault or Anderson there?
Yeah, both of those guys have severely underperformed this year. Them two, along with the T. Higgins, are kind of like the 3 receivers that we've been chasing all season long.
Yeah.
But Cam was looking Robbie's way quite a bit last week, so I'm gonna go Robbie Anderson on that one.
Okay, great answer. Brandon, any thoughts on Melvin Gordon in a GPP, Kristi?
I'm on the other side of that where I really like Javonte Williams and hoping that they go to the rookie a little bit more. So I prefer Williams.
Okay, Jenna says, how do you feel about Gaskin? Kristi, you worked him in later. You said you did like him, right?
I think he's a good cash game play.
Yeah. Okay. Keith, FanDuel Cash, Friermuth or Arnold on FanDuel Cash?
I prefer friermuth over Arnold.
All right. Fernandez, Deontay or Pittman? Have we gone over this one, Kristi?
No, we haven't. Both great plays. I'd probably go Deontay straight up, but they're both great plays.
Okay. EJ says Ayuk or Boyd?
I like what we've seen out of Ayuk here recently, so give me Ayuk.
Okay, great. DK Cash question is a 2v2, Ayuk and Gronk or Higgy and friermuth?
What was the first one again?
It was Ayuk and Gronk versus Higgins and friermuth. The pronunciations are killing me today, but it's that.
I'd probably take the second one.
Okay, great. Life Stories says CPAT? Question mark. That's it. That's all he says. CPAT? Question mark.
Yeah, questionable tag all week. Weren't sure if he was going to play. I mean, I don't think they would run him out there if he was not healthy. They don't really have anything to play for. I mean, I guess they're on the fringe of playoff contention, but yeah, I think he's going to come in under own because of that Q tag all week. So I like him for tournaments for sure.
Okay, we've got about 3 minutes left. Dean's burner account says, if Tyrod runs in a touchdown, I will streak down the streets of LA. He did it twice last week, so you got to be careful with that. Devin, FanDuel Cash, last piece at the wide receiver spot. You want Deontay Johnson, Cooks, or Pittman? Kristi, I'll give that to you.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson, Cooks, or Pittman. Last spot. I'd probably go Deontay Johnson.
All right. Jason says, I need a defense under 2,600 in a DraftKings GPP. No Texans. None.
No Texans under 2,600. Give me the Falcons.
Okay, great. Mike says FanDuel Cash tight end, Higbee, Arnold, or friermuth? Kristi?
I'd say friermuth.
All right. Jenna says, didn't say what this is for, but Galladay, Beckham, or Myers? Ice?
Beckham would be my preferred there.
Okay. Alex says FanDuel single entry in the flex spot. Are we going Saquon, Chase, or Henderson? Kristi?
Chase or Henderson. I would say I'd go Barkley.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Alex, FanDuel, Cam says DK tournament, Mixon or Chase in the flex? Who we flexing, Keith?
I like Chase over Mixon.
All right. Nathaniel says, how does this guy not know how to pronounce ayuk? I'm not an NFL. I'm a weatherman. I'm filling in last minute. Give me a break. Let's see. Miles Sanders and Jamar or AJ Dillon and Deontay, DKGPP?
What was the first one?
It was Miles Sanders and Jamar or AJ Dillon and Deontay.
I'd go Dillon and Deontay.
Rhino, FanDuel Cash, Pittman and Ayuk. See, now I do know how to pronounce it. Or Cooks and E. Moore.
First one.
Kimberly just saying, hey, nobody's talking about Keenan Cole. Nobody's talking about him. Any interest? We're not talking about him either, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those gross punt plays. We talked about the Texans guys, but the Jets guys on the other side of that are, I mean, same as the Texans guys. He's in play.
Okay. All right. Keith, FanDuel single entry, Kristi, Godwin or Evans?
That's a really tough call.
Every week.
I like
every
them
week.
both. Every week it is.
Yeah.
I like them both. I think Godwin, I'm kind of going more for cash, and Evans for tournaments is kind of how I've sorted it out, but they're both great.
Okay, look at this. We got a weather question. Jay Fernandez says, any snow anywhere? No, the weather is super boring this week. There's nothing fun. It's cold in Green Bay. It's a little breezy, but the weather's fine everywhere, which is frustrating. CMC or Adams, says Chris. Both of them are beasts, but who's your beast, Keith?
It's CMC today.
I like it. Got to that one. Steve, DKGPP, Chase and Barkley, Kristi, or Najee and Higgy?
I'd say the first one, Chase and Barkley.
Okay, we're coming up on a lock here, less than a minute. And we actually have answered all of the questions, like perfectly in time. Yeah, we timed that out like we've been doing this all year, guys. That was amazing. It was phenomenal stuff. All right, so is Daniel Jones going to win me a GPP? Kristi?
Sure, let's go with that, just because.
Sure. I can't I can't stop doing it. I'm just every time.
Do you have Saquon in your lineup?
I don't. That was probably dumb, huh?
Well, I mean, I like him a lot this week, so you could get exposure to that game with Saquon.
Yeah. Did that game lock already?
It did.
Too late to get my point anyways. Okay, well, we have hit the lock. We have answered all the questions. Guys, if you're in that YouTube chat, hit that like and subscribe button because that was amazing free information. And if you want more information like that, sign up for Rotogrinders Premium. We do this every single day for every single sport. We break down everything you need to know, and we do it all the way up until lock. Every day, 7 days a week. It's incredible. Sign up for Rotogrinders Premium right now. You get $10 off your first month. And then we've got our hooks into you, and you'll never want to stop because we bring out the good stuff. Guys, we appreciate you so much. For Kristi and for Keith, aka the Iceman, for Devin, always working hard behind the scenes. Guys, we appreciate you. We love you, and we will catch you tomorrow. You have been crunched.